Hey everyone, this is Teal and Teal of Studio Blue.
In this episode of Creator Classroom, we start our world building series.
Tonight we'll focus on building the physical world.
This includes its geographical timeline, climate, weather events, and more.
Join us every Monday as we teach new tips and tricks on story creation for everything from video games to novels.
Let's get ready because class is in session.
Hello everyone, I'm Teal.
And I'm Teal.
And we're with Studio Blue.
Welcome to our Creator Classroom, where our topic is building your physical world.
Right, so this is going to be part of our world building workshop series, and tonight's going to be physically the world itself. Hello BG, hello Ventus, hello Bubba Hotep, hello everyone watching, lurking, etc. Remember, if you're following us on Twitch, please follow us. If you're watching us on YouTube, smash that like, subscribe, and notification button, and comment if you would. So, tonight's going to be in two parts. Hello Reverie, how are you? Tonight's workshop is going to be in two parts. First part is going to be Teal going over sort of a presentation of workshop building, of world building, talking specifically about the physical world itself. Then we're going to take a quick break, go to a BRB. Then I will come back and we will work through creating our own unique world based off the points Teal talks about. Teal, before I turn it over to you,
Sure.
I'm going to be sitting in the director seat right now. Teal's in the player seat giving the presentation. If you have any questions, please hit us up on chat or any comments. That's fine. Let's go into it. Hello, Zuma. Welcome to the chat. Let's have a good time and let's make some worlds.
All right. So, when you're building your physical world, you need to think about where it came from.
Hey, Reillo.
Hey, there's Reillo.
Yeah, hey. So, just so you know, this is part of a series, guys. Right now, we're talking about just the world itself. We're not going to be talking about anything like magic or religion or culture or people. We're literally just talking about the physical world. People are still piling in, Teal.
I think we're going to wait for a few more people, folks, because...
yeah, people are jumping right on in.
Exactly. I don't want to get started and then somebody misses something. It's
Exactly.
not cool.
Exactly. Exactly. No, well, landmass is not buildings. Hey, Graceless, welcome to the stream. All right, so just to kind of reiterate, we're going to be doing a series on world building over the however long, not all one after the other. This one's about the world itself, the planet. And we're not using the word...
The physical world.
Right.
Okay, the physical, I should say natural world.
Right.
It has nothing to do with buildings or civilization, anything like that. It's just your physical world.
Right. Ventus, that's a natural state of being. But what we're not talking about specifically is just a planet, because you're going to see from some of these examples, some of these aren't really planets in the traditional sense.
Right.
So we're saying the physical world. And we put those in air quotes because if it's a ghost world, like the spirit world from Beetlejuice, that's not really a physical world. We're just using that in air quotes because it's the quickest way to describe it. But we're going to talk about literally the world itself. And then in future series, we'll get into things like the religions, if there are any, magic, metaphysics, spirituality, buildings, actual architecture, art, civilization, music, everything, all under the sun. And I think we've got enough people in. I'll say hello, Yorkshire, hello, Reillo, hello, Graceless. I think I said hello to everybody, Reverie, Zuma. Let's jump in. Teal, hit it with that high point. Reillo, all of our creator classrooms are 3 hours. The first half is going to be Teal. The second half tonight's going to be me. So it's 3 hours long. So
right.
Till about-ish 9:20 or so Central. All right, Teal.
Okay.
Give us that pep we love so much.
All right, well, let's get started building our physical world. So the purpose of this workshop is we're going to discuss the ways to create your story's world. And this is either from a writing or a game perspective. It doesn't matter the medium. This is world building.
Exactly.
And I'm going to illustrate my points using 3 very distinct worlds.
Exactly. Yep. So go ahead, Teal. Like I said, if I see anything in chat that someone asks you a question, I'll toss it out. Otherwise, you have the floor.
Yeah, questions are welcome. So yeah, this is going to be cool.
It's going to be great.
Okay, so the three worlds I'm going to look at are our world, Earth. I'm going to look at Narnia, and I'm going to look at Nirn, which is from the Elder Scrolls series.
Right. Specifically, what is referred to as the Nirn, the planet in which Tamriel and the other continents are on, where we'll talk a little bit about cosmology in general. And the reason we chose these three worlds, Teal and I talked at length about it, they're very, very different in many aspects.
Absolutely.
So, anywho, let's go ahead and do this thing.
Okay. So this is what you need to consider in order to build your physical world.
So, Ventus, Nirn is the planet, quote unquote, that the Elder Scrolls series takes place on. Exactly.
Yeah, Tamriel is just a single continent, right?
And you are correct. The Elder Scrolls games don't really go outside of Tamriel, but there is a world there, and there is a world build. It's pretty interesting when we get into it. All right, go ahead, Teal.
Okay. So the first is creation. You've got how did your world come into being? Okay.
Right. And
it could either be natural, it could be a divine thing, or it could be a mixture of the two. We'll also go through the geological timeline for each world. Okay. How did your current world come to be? Okay. From the very beginning, from creation, all the way through your present time. What all occurred?
And please understand, when we say creation, we don't necessarily mean a divine creation. We just mean the moment in which it began to come into existence.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. So from creation, and then you have your geological timeline. Those will drive your current geography. Okay. What physical aspects does your world have? Geography, in turn, drives your climate and your weather patterns. Climate, seasons. What sort of weather does your world have?
Mm-hmm.
And then specifically, we'll look at weather events. Okay,
Right.
What kind of events happen in your world? This can include not just your natural events, like hurricanes or tornadoes, but supernatural events, divine events, man-made events, and of course disasters of any and all kinds.
And it's important to note, as Teal goes through this, we chose these three different worlds because they handle it so very, very differently. For example, some of them are, and some worlds are going to be because magic, right, Teal?
Right. Because magic.
Exactly.
Or because a deity did this or said so.
Exactly. But what you want to do as the creative, as the person creating the game world or the story world, is you want to have some set of rules in the background. Even the most batshit crazy worlds like Ring World from Terry Pratchett or Xanth from Piers Anthony, they actually are built on a set of world building rules. And you as the creator want to make sure you follow the rules you set. Now, you need to know all of these things that Teal and I are that Teal's going to be talking about, specifically because it helps you create other parts later on. You as the creator decide how granular you want to get.
Yep.
Exactly, the Speed Force, Zuma.
So, again, as we go through this, we're going to keep those categories in mind, because that's how we're going to build. That's how these worlds I've picked out, Earth, Narnia, and Nirn. That's how they were physically built along those lines.
Exactly.
Okay, creation. So Earth creation is the most detailed of the three. Very, very detailed. I'm going to go through all the Earth examples during my presentation, and a lot of it I condensed down into the simplest of terms.
Right.
Because it is such a detailed science that spans many, many years of research.
It does, and it combines everything from astronomy to cosmology to geology. There's a lot that goes into what made Earth, our Earth, what it is, but it's important when we get to the end and we kind of talk about each of the three worlds as sort of a post-mortem to Teal's lecture, you'll see there's a reason why you may want to put this much effort in. Go ahead, hon.
Okay. So the creation of Earth.
Hey, Tom, welcome to the stream. Sorry, hon.
Okay. The creation of Earth basically was formed from a disc-shaped mass of dust and gas left over from the formation of the sun, which also created the rest of the solar system.
Hey, you can see a nifty little graphic there. By the way, long time scale, correct, hon?
Yes.
Billions, I think.
Yeah, when we're not talking about geological time yet. We're
Right.
just talking about creation.
Right.
The moment the world was created.
Right.
That's what we're discussing.
Got it.
And this was the creation of Earth. Okay.
Okay.
Born from dust.
All right.
Okay. Stardust.
Stardust.
Okay. Narnia came into being through created by Aslan, who sang the world into existence.
And that's it.
That is it.
Right.
When he sang, and the stars and the moon appeared, and you had the land, the trees, the mountains, animals, talking animals. He made it all in one go.
In one go. All right.
Now, Nern.
Thanks, Ventus.
This is where it got a little complicated. But creation of Nern, it was a result of a failed project conceived by the deity Lorcan and designed by another deity, Magnus. It was the result of 12 worlds shattering and then combining into one.
Just for a little bit of backstory, we're not going to go too deep into it because this is not an Elder Scrolls stream, but there was a lot of BS that happened prior to that with the Divines, Akatosh, the Daedra, the Aedra. A lot of people just kind of not agreeing on how reality should be. And then this happened. And fortunately for us, we're condensing it down into really its most moment of planetary creation.
Correct. But the creation history for Nern was a bit of a convoluted mess. And this is what I was able to titrate out of it.
Perfectly okay. And we'll get into why it's a mess later on. Move on, please.
Okay.
Let's do this thing.
Now, the geological timeline.
Tiny text. Sorry, that's all on me. I designed these, and I was like, Teal wrote down a lot. And the thing is what Teal wrote down is just a fraction of what really happened. So I think you have your notes.
Very detailed. So let's say that Earth is a fictional planet, right?
Right.
So the author or game developer went into great detail.
Yes, he did.
On the geological timeline for their world.
Right.
But basically, the timeline is divided into periods of activity spanning 4.5 billion years.
Right.
So after Earth was created, it was a sphere of molten lava that gradually cooled to form a crust. Plate tectonics came into being.
Right.
Water accumulated in the atmosphere, and the moon formed.
And we are giving the abridged version, of course.
Following that, lots of volcanoes and high plate tectonic activity.
Oh, yeah.
Supercontinents formed and broke apart repeatedly. Oceans and other bodies of water, likewise, formed and shifted repeatedly.
Yes.
There was a lot of activity.
A lot of chaos, would you say?
Yes. The planet's magnetic field was then established, which is instrumental for preventing our atmosphere from being stripped away.
True story.
Very important. You've got to have an atmosphere in order for life on this planet to exist.
And you're right, Reillo. It does sound like a pitch of an epic world. If you get down into how our Earth was actually formed scientifically, it's actually an amazing story. Please continue.
Okay. So once the magnetic field's in place and the atmosphere stabilizes, then life begins with single-celled organisms that evolve into more complex forms. Flora and fauna then diversify and are impacted by plate tectonics, such as continental drift, volcanoes, mountains, the location and depth of your bodies of water. And they are also impacted by climate, such as ice ages.
Absolutely. Welcome to the stream, human.
Several mass extinction events occur during this time.
Teal and I had a side conversation about this a few hours ago, and it's not just meteors that caused mass extinction events. It could be anything, I think you said, from raising the temperature to the acidity of the water.
That's correct.
And you mentioned a level of oxygen even at one point.
Yes, because originally this planet had low oxygen levels in the atmosphere.
Right. And yes,
when the plant life burst and exploded, which was mostly ferns,
right,
and things like that,
right,
they contributed a lot of oxygen into the atmosphere, and so that shifted life,
yeah,
and things died out that couldn't use all that oxygen.
Yeah.
And other things came into being that processed the oxygen.
It's pretty amazing. And yes, human reality is more awesome than fantasy. The truth is, this world literally exists because at one point it was really hot. It started cooling down, and as it cooled down, stuff moved. Atmospheres formed and reformed. A magnetosphere, the magnetic field Teal's talking about, keeps the sun from ripping our atmosphere apart. So it was like a dance, wouldn't you say?
It is. So the whole point of this planet's geological timeline is to show where what am I trying to say? Where life begins, right, and how it's impacted.
Right.
Because if you're going to tell a story that is in, prehistoric primordial Earth, then your continents look different than they do today. Right. The water is different. The composition of the atmosphere is different.
Right. And also, if you're creating your own world and you want to give it the same level of detail that Earth has, you want to consider all of these events coming together that form whatever your story world is. Because a lot of things came together, and for a long time, this planet would have killed us humans. So,
correct.
It's, if you want to put this, and we'll get into, like, when we go to the post-mortem at the end of this, you'll see there's a lot of positives and benefits to putting this much work into your geological timeline. All right, let's continue.
Okay. So, Earth is the most detailed.
Right.
Then you get to Narnia. There's none. The world simply came into being because Aslan willed it. The Narnia of the stories is the same Narnia of creation.
And
so everything that the deity Aslan created stayed.
Right.
There was no plate tectonics and evolution of life and mass extinction events. There were none of that.
Right.
Nothing.
Right. And we'll get into the reason why that is useful to certain types of storytellers at the end as well. Don't think that just because there was no geological timeline that Narnia is a poorly written world. It's actually a very well written world. And that's awesome. Human has the first 2 billion years of her universe. Just the first 2 billion. Just the first. And Reillo, yeah, we're kind of hard to kill. Anyway, let's go.
Okay. Now, Nirn is kind of a mixture of the two.
Right.
Okay. Its timeline. Any changes to the planet of Nirn are a result of specific events. Okay. Originally, Nirn is one landmass, just one giant landmass with interlocking oceans. It would have stayed this way forever, except for an event. War broke out amongst this race of beings called the Elnaphe.
Right.
The Elnaphe in this world were the common ancestor of elves and men. This big old war split the landmass into several continents. You have Tamriel in the center. Atmora is to the north. The continent of Akavir is to the east. Pyandia, which is a big island, is to the south. And then the continent of Yakuta is to the west.
Right. At Reillo, that's not actually accurate. Without a geographical timeline, you still have constraints. They're just different than if you have one. So unless you want to just toss everything with world building to the wind and hope that you remain consistent with your storyline, you do want to set those set of rules that we talked about earlier. So you're limiting yourself, you're constrained in a different way if you go the Narnia route, which is no timeline at all.
Correct.
Please continue, Teal.
Narnia is a static world.
Right.
Okay. So then things would have stayed in that way forever if you hadn't had an event. The only volcano in Tamriel is formed by the casting down of Lorcan's heart.
Right.
So there would have been no volcano at all in Tamriel, except somebody tore out Lorcan's heart and threw it down to the earth, and it formed a big volcano.
We're looking at you, Akatosh. And of course, for those of you who are not familiar with the Elder Scrolls, that's the infamous Red Mountain that's in the middle of Vardenfell, which is in Morrowind. It is a massive volcano, and it's both a huge play in the third Elder Scrolls game, and its destruction pretty much screwed the Dunmer over for setting up for Skyrim, the fifth game.
So you can see that just with what Steele said, that this volcano is very important.
Very important.
So there it is.
It's kind of the main plot for Morrowind, actually.
And then the final big event that shaped Nirn is the continent of Yakuta sank into the sea.
Right. Now, what we're not going to talk about is things like the Warp in the West, which was a massive dragon break, and other events like the Return of Alduin. That's more of your metaphysical and divine, which is for another world build. These are just the geological events that shaped Nirn into what it is during the times of the most current Elder Scrolls game.
So, just to add on to that point a bit, with Yakuta sinking into the sea like that, then that explains why all the people of Yakuta went over to Tamriel.
And became, I believe, the Red Guards, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Which is amazing because when you look at that, you have a period of time in which that it's like the Atmorans coming from the north, the Yakutans coming from the west, and they come together and you get two of the most, I would say, ethnically diverse races of man.
Correct.
The Red Guards and the Nords, who are just amazing, and you can kind of see that shift. And we're not going to get into the culture, but you can see that shift in which that occurs. So this catastrophic event, which is the destruction of the Yakuta continent, directly leads into us having a very important part of Tamriel. Okay?
Okay. So let's talk about the geography. This is present day, and I put that in air quotes.
Right.
Because this would be the present day of your world.
Right.
Okay. So Earth has land masses. You've got continents and islands. It has bodies of water, oceans, seas, lakes, and rivers. You've got small clusters of mountains, and you have long chains of mountains. Mm-hmm. Some are not very high, like the Appalachian Mountains, and some are just towering, the Himalayas.
Very much so.
You've got valleys, deep rifts. You've got volcanoes, deserts, grasslands and prairies, savannas, forests, jungles, marshes, and coastlines.
Now, interestingly enough, I want to make two quick points. Everything that Teal has mentioned is used in some way, shape, or form in fiction, because it's hard for us to think of climates and geographical regions outside of what already exists on Earth. So you may see a place that has less, but you're not really going to see too many places that have more, outside of maybe like a poison marsh, which is just a marsh with a status ailment.
Correct.
We know that these geographies exist because we see them. our Earth has all manner of geography because it exists in a temperate zone, in a temperate climate in the habitable zone of our star. Also, I want to point to the deep rifts. There are very few worlds that are out there in fiction that pay attention to rifts outside of like a canyon. We have the Marinara, put it on your spaghetti, the Mariana Trench, the Challenger Deep. We have massive parts of the ocean, and the ocean is very usually unexplored. Would you not say so, Teal?
Yes.
And that's something for you to consider when you're creating your world is, what is the ocean like? Now, is that important? Absolutely, because the deeper the ocean, the cooler the water, the more it can affect the weather. These are all things that are interlocking. There's no such thing as just a world exists because if you want it to be a fluid, dynamic world like our Earth. Now, you don't have to go into deep. You don't have to map out your plate tectonics. You don't have to map out your oceanic trenches, but you want to be thinking about that in the back of your head. What features do you have that shape the way your world looks and the way your world functions? And that's why it's good to use the Earth as a baseline, wouldn't you say?
I do say, yep.
Yeah. We have Arctics on both the North and South Pole. We have a magnetosphere. We have a temperate zone on the North and the Southern Hemisphere. And we have cyclonic winds going clockwise on one hemisphere, counterclockwise in the other, and we have an equatorial strip. We're actually a really good place to start for just about any world. All right, let's go.
Okay, so the geography of Narnia. Now, when C.S. Lewis wrote this, he was only focusing on pretty much the country of Narnia.
Right.
But he had detailed notes on everything surrounding his fictional country. And so he was able to reference geography in other places through character dialogue and talking about history and stuff like that.
Absolutely. And human...
Now, let me point out that Narnia, unlike Earth and unlike Nirn, is not a sphere. Right. Narnia is a flat plane.
Yes. And this is not something that I believe C.S. Lewis ever actually says. But you can tell from the water wall and a few of the things that you and I noted when we were researching for this workshop, that it can't actually exist on a sphere, could it?
No, it cannot.
Right. Now, Human brought up a good quote from Carl Sagan: if you wish to make an apple pie from scratch, you must first invent the universe. And that's absolutely true, Human. Creating your universe allows you to kind of determine how your physics work. And as you'll see as we go through Narnia, Narnia has some physics that don't really work in reality, but they work fine in Narnality. All right?
So, with the country of Narnia being quote-unquote the center of the world, it's mostly rolling hills that rise up to low mountains in the south. The country itself is mostly forests, but it does have marshland in the north. It's bordered on the north by a big river, on the east by an ocean, on the south by mountains, and on the west by a great mountain range, which is alluded to having, just really, really tall mountains, just about insurmountable.
Right. And Reillo,
you don't have travel back and forth across those mountains. It's just very rare. In fact, it's called the Western Wild because nobody goes there.
Exactly. And Reillo does bring up a good point. C.S. Lewis did say a children's story that adults cannot enjoy also is not a good children's story. That is accurate. C.S. Lewis did put work into it, into his world. Okay, please continue.
The southern mountains, of course, are much lower in height, and you could travel across them to the lands in the south. And in fact, he actually have created a country that is in those mountains, that encompasses those mountains.
Right.
What's important to note is that those mountains, beyond them to the south, is a great desert.
Right.
So you basically go from a forest to the mountains to the desert.
Right.
Which would make sense if it was east-west, but it makes no sense being north-south.
Right. Which leads credence to it being a flat plane world and not a spherical world, because you go north and you hit swamps. That's not how it works.
No. But that's what he created.
Right.
Swamps and then a river.
Yes.
Okay, now south. Okay, in the desert is a really big volcano.
Yes.
It's considered a remarkable landmark, and a lot of people talk about it in that particular story setting.
Right.
South of the desert is a large river. And he put that there so that the civilization that lives in the desert will have a water source. That's the only reason.
Right.
Let's talk about the east. So the Eastern Ocean is vast. It's filled with islands and archipelagos. Eventually, the ocean, you go far enough to the east, it terminates where the sky meets the sea.
Exactly. And that's where you have your water wall that I think Reepicheep in the third book go to basically heaven.
Right.
To Aslan's land.
Right. That is correct. It's a wall
Of
where the sky and the earth meet.
Right.
And
exactly.
And there's a huge mountain range there too. So yeah, it's basically a terminus point.
Right. And if you look at it, Narnia is a box.
Yep.
There's really no other way to describe it. And it was necessary for C.S. Lewis to create his world to be this way, to tell his story. But and again, when we get to that post-mortem, you'll see it comes with its own level of constraints and limitations.
Correct.
All right, let's talk about Nirn.
All right, Nirn. All right, not much is said about the other continents, to be honest with you. They focus on Tamriel because the entire story, the games, take place on the island continent of Tamriel.
Exactly.
Yes, it is an island continent. It is surrounded by oceans on all four sides.
Right.
But on this island continent, you have mountains, either single mountains or mountain ranges. You've got valleys, rivers and lakes. You have coastlines, both rocky and sandy.
Yes.
You've got marshes, both chilly marshes and warm marshes.
Right.
You've got forests, both deciduous and alpine. Deserts, savannas, and that one volcano.
Right. So Reillo, you're saying the only info given about other continents is that Tiber Septim / Talos came from Atmora. That's the theory. There's widely regarded, but the way that and we'll get into it. The Elder Scrolls lore is not consistent with the world, and the world is not consistent with the lore. So what we're going off of is kind of, we know the Nords, that which of Talos was most likely a Nord, possibly a Breton, but we know the Nords came from Atmora, and we know that the Red Guards came from Yakuta, exactly. But the geography of Nirn is what Teal's talking about, and that is pretty much it hits all the high points of climates, including desert and Arctic. So you can kind of place where Tamriel would be on the planet, where the lower half, including Somerset Isles, but we'll get to that in a second.
The lower half is near the equator. It's equatorial.
Right.
Whereas the upper part is in the Arctic zone.
Right, because Atmora is an Arctic country. Somerset is, because magic, always spring. Thank you, Graceless. All right, let's continue.
Okay. So the geography of your world directly influences your climate and your weather patterns. On Earth, you've got it. Your climate and weather patterns are marked by great diversity, and they change over time. depending on what's going on with your geography, your plate tectonics, continents moving, oceans rising and falling, lakes forming, lakes drying up, the movement of the wind. So great diversity.
Right.
You've got hot, dry climates. You've got hot and humid climates. You have those mild, temperate climates. You've got cold and dry. You've got cold and wet. The whole spectrum. You have 4 seasons, excluding the poles. Winter, spring, summer, autumn are in the temperate zone. In the equatorial region, you have your winter rainy dry and your summer rainy dry. And what we mean by that is the rainy season where it rains, and your dry season where there's not a cloud in the sky. And these 2 cycles happen twice a year.
Right. You don't have a whole lot of fall and a whole lot of spring.
You're not going to, because of how the sun is shining all the time on the equator.
And even for those of you who are, for example, in the deeper parts of the southern United States, for example, you will see less of a spring and an autumn than those who are further north. So it is noticeable even if you're not in the equator, the equatorial region. And the inverse is also going to be noticeable even if you're not in the Arctic region, if you're far enough north.
Right.
So again, a very diverse living world that changes depending on where you are at.
Changes where you're at. Changes due to the placement of your continents and islands and that sort of thing.
Exactly. All right, so let's continue.
Okay, in Narnia, you do have some diversity in climate and weather patterns.
That's awesome, Boba Hotep.
But that the patterns are static, and they only change by supernatural means.
Right.
So you have your hot and dry climates, you have your hot and humid climates, you've got mild temperate climates, and then you have some cold climates, some cold places. You have 4 seasons in Narnia, except when the White Witch ruled.
Right.
Okay.
Jadis, yeah.
Jadis, the White Witch, made everything winter, and it stayed winter.
Always winter, never Christmas.
But that's a supernatural means.
Right.
Barring that, Narnia had 4 seasons.
Right.
We do know that the desert had a rainy season and a dry season.
Now, important to note here, when Teal says that Narnia has 4 seasons, she means locked into an exact equal 4 seasons. Spring was X number of months, assumingly 3.
Yes.
Summer, the same. Autumn, the same. Winter, the same, with a transition between each. In other words, absolutely perfect seasonal rotation. Okay?
That's right.
Like clockwork, Reillo, absolutely.
Yes. It was like clockwork. It never changed.
And in many ways, it mirrored Earth's seasons if Earth was perfect in its seasonal rotation.
Correct.
Northern Hemisphere.
Nothing is said about the climate of other places, such as Archenland and the northern wastes,
right,
or those archipelagos. But the assumption is that, especially for the islands and archipelagos, that it would mimic Earth.
Right. So you basically have a monsoon season.
Tropical islands, that sort of thing.
Right, with like a monsoon season.
So yeah.
Okay.
We could only extrapolate.
Right.
Okay, so for Nirn has a great diversity of climates. But it's static. The climates never change. There's never a shift. Deserts don't move. Lakes don't dry up. You don't have earthquakes that open up and form trenches. Nothing like that happens.
Not naturally.
That's what I'm referring to.
Yeah.
It's not naturally.
Nothing natural at all.
So you've got your hot, dry climates. You have hot and humid. Same as Earth. Mild and temperate. Cold and dry. Cold and wet. And because the story focuses on Tamriel. It really does. So Tamriel has 4 seasons. That's due to its temperate location.
Right.
It is the central continent, so it's assumed to be in the northern temperate zone.
And it has 12 calendar months which directly mimic Earth's Frostfall, Darkseed, First Seed, or whatever it's called.
All of it, yeah.
All of it. And you can actually go on to any number of the ESO lore sites, and you can actually see which month in Tamriel mimics which month on Earth, and it's exact, up to and including September and October being a harvest season. In fact, I think on Elder Scrolls Online, they actually celebrate canonically now.
Yes.
Their first day of their first month is New Hope, which is our new year. So yeah, it started out as an event, but it's now a canonical thing where they do celebrate the turning of the year. But it never changes. It's always the same.
Always the same.
Unless exerted on by an outside force. Okay?
Okay. Now, the climate will drive weather events. Okay? And Earth has everything from mild to catastrophic events.
Right.
So, you could have clear skies, you could have cloudy, you could have fog, rain, thunderstorms. Any speed of wind, from gentle breezes to gales. Catastrophic events, you can have tornadoes and hurricanes and typhoons. You also have a snowfall and sleet and icy rain. You've got the whole gamut.
Right.
And it's all driven by the physical forces of the world, geography, climate.
So you have all of these things that came together from the creation of our world, which was basically compressed stardust over billions of years, superheated and then slowly cooling down to form the plates, the magnetosphere, and all the other various parts of our Earth that come together to create the weather events that we currently have. There is a natural explanation for all of it, and it's a delicate dance between a multitude of factors. That's how Earth is as a physical world.
So Earth would be very, very dynamic.
Highly so.
Yes.
Highly so. Now, we're getting near the end of this part, so we'll get to our post-mortem soon, but you'll see why this could be very important. Okay?
Okay, so weather events in Narnia. There were no catastrophic weather events. It's just, it's sunny, or it's rainy, or there's fog, or there's some snowfall.
Right.
That's it.
Right.
Aside from that endless winter that was imposed by the White Witch, Narnia never had a catastrophic weather event. Ever. You don't hear anything about tornadoes or hurricanes.
The great earthquake that destroyed Cair Paravel doesn't exist. Never happened.
So Narnia again is rather static and perfect, if you will. There's no natural disasters there.
Right.
Now, Nirn. Nirn does have your typical weather. It also has catastrophic weather events. The catastrophic weather events are generally caused by magic or some divine mean.
We show the infamous Oblivion crisis here, which I believe that's Kavach, because that's a fantastic example of magic/divinity being used to wreak meteorological havoc on the world. During the Oblivion crisis, for example, every time a gate sprung up, it wasn't just the gate acting as a portal to Mehrunes Dagon's Oblivion. The whole area itself started to kind of meld. And you could see the red skies and the crackling thunder, and it caused devastating effects. In fact, certain mods will even make it literally turn into lightning storms and tornadoes that rip around the area around you because the two planes of existence, Nirn and Oblivion, are starting to merge. You get the exact same thing in the Elder Scrolls Online with Molag Bald's plane meld and his Dark Anchors. So whenever these two realities start to combine, bad shit happens on Nirn. And that's how most of the disasters, the catastrophic weather events occur, is because of either a Daedra, a dragon, something like that, or some other massive event.
Right. And as far as magic goes, the whole reason in Skyrim that Winterfell is, what is it called?
Winterhold.
Winterhold is basically just one big cliff because a big storm blew up unexpectedly.
Yep.
The mages are blamed, and it just destroyed the coast and left very little standing.
Very, very little.
There's never been a weather event like that before or since.
Right. Which is one of the reasons why the College of Mages are blamed, because it's not a commonplace thing. Oh, it must be magic, because the college was the only thing that was left standing. It happened out of nowhere. Had to have been mages. The precedent was set.
So, in Nirn, yeah, the only catastrophic weather events are caused by outside means.
Exactly. Now, we're getting near the end, but now we're going to do our post-mortem before we go to the second half. The reason that Teal and I spent so much time showing you this is because these 3 sample worlds show 3 very distinct different types of world building of your physical world, your planet, quote unquote. Earth, our world, is highly dynamic and is based on change, constant change, things in flux, whether it be weather patterns, plate tectonics, cooling of the magma and the shifting of the crust, oxygen content rising, falling, plant life, animal life, all these things playing in a delicate balance. Narnia is static. There's really no other way to describe it.
It is a static world that was basically world in a box. It was built
by a god,
by a deity,
right? And
the stories themselves only take place in the center of this box.
Exactly.
So basically, the country of Narnia was created first, and then the other things to the north, south, east, and west were added as the author needed them.
Exactly. And
that's how he built it.
And you are very welcome, Graceless. I'm glad you're enjoying, and I hope you have good mac and cheese. And then we have Nirn. Now, Nirn's kind of in the middle. There's a lot of dynamicism to Nirn, but everything, and this was the reason why Teal and I chose Nirn. Nirn, nothing is by chance, by mathematics, by chaos. It's all driven by someone, whether it be a person, a group of people, a deity of some sorts, or a group of deities doing a thing. It's event driven. And that's very important to note. Now,
I do want to say something else about the world building of Nirn.
Okay.
Unlike Narnia, Nirn's world building was done by several different people.
Yes.
During development of several different games.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
They didn't sit down and hammer out the geography of Nirn before making the first game Arena.
Exactly. They did.
The geography, the physical world of Nirn has evolved with each game that's been released.
Right.
And some of the things that they said were there in the beginning just disappeared from the lore later.
Exactly.
There are conflicting accounts of how things came into being and where they were placed.
Very much so.
But at this point in time, the developers along with the community have basically had an accord, and they've settled into what Nirn is. They have actually hashed it out, and at this point we have, okay, here's the various events that occurred to change Nirn, and this is the eras that they occurred in, etc., etc. It is noted that time itself in the beginning of Nirn was a very fluid thing. So,
very much so.
Nobody really knows when things happen. It's just stuff happened. It wasn't later until the deity of time was created,
right,
that things became linear, and then you could just figure out what happened and when it happened.
Exactly. And we're not even going to get into various pieces, parts like dragon breaks and stuff. So this actually
basically this is the way of how not to do it.
Right.
Nirn is a perfect example of how not to do it.
Right. Now we're not, and this is leading into the final part of this conversation, which is you need to build the world in a way that allows you to construct your story, the story you want to tell. There is no reason to create a world like Earth where you worry about the moment the proto-star creation, the clouds of dust, the formation of the Earth, all the pieces, parts of the geography, the geological timeline. You don't need all of that if you're not going to create a story that is encompassing an entire planet with events occurring that need to have an explanation and make sense. You know, you can of course say magic even on Earth. You could take our world, add magic, and all it would do is add an extra layer. It wouldn't take away from how Earth works. Why would you want to create a dynamic world like the Earth? Let's say you want to create a world where whatever your story is, where it moves forward in its evolution, and I mean evolution of the planet, and its climates, and its geography, and all of its little pieces, parts, and as that happens, as it reacts to, the sudden collision of two plates making a fault line appear and breaking up a continent, etc., the destruction, the explosion of a super volcano, the caldera bursting like the one in Yellowstone, oh my god, that would be devastating. Stuff like that. Those events are needed. If you need these kind of disasters that bring this layer of reality, then you want to create a world like Earth where you're putting into thought. Now, do you have to go as deep into the level of granular detail that our world has?
Absolutely not.
No. Not at all. The world that Teal and I are creating for our fantasy story, not even remotely that level of detail, but we do talk about it.
Right.
We do talk about it.
And see, the thing is, by you as the developer knowing that, okay, my world is dynamic, I have plate tectonics, so my continents drift, then that will help drive and explain why this tribe of people migrated from one area to another.
Mm-hmm.
And, at the time there was a land bridge.
Right. And
so they traveled over. But then the land bridge disappeared.
And you have to know why.
And so you have to know why this land bridge disappeared, right, and trap them on this particular continent or land or island or whatever.
Exactly.
Okay, you have to, because the behavior of your living things is driven by geography.
Right.
And the weather.
Exactly.
Okay. The fact that going back to Nirn here, the whole continent of Yakuta sinking into the sea. Okay. That caused all of its people to move over to Tamriel, and now you got this whole culture and race of people influencing how Tamriel develops civilization-wise and culture-wise and historical event-wise.
Exactly.
However, wars and stuff like that.
However, what Teal is talking about, that moment of Yakuta sinking, only affects people. Think about that in terms of our world. What would happen if a continent just sunk in the ocean? What would happen to the sea level? What would happen to, would it generate a tsunami? Of course it would. How huge? What event would occur in that? Because Nirn doesn't do that, because Nirn doesn't function like our world does, certain things are ignored, and then a precedent is said that you can't have that. So if you're building a world like Nirn, and I don't mean in the way Nirn was built, where it's haphazardly a bunch of people throwing stuff together, but you have a world that is event-driven, and you have a continent sink and it doesn't cause a damn tsunami, then later on you can't have something sink off the coast and it causes a tsunami.
Correct.
Okay? You can have magic whatever cause the tsunami, but it's not a result. To kind of catch up with chat for a second, Nico, we're talking about physical worlds. We're not talking about culture and technology. That's a later stream. You're absolutely right, Reverie. And Dr. Stone is very cool. So yeah, Tom also says it would be also give a reason for different world maps in future/past games, because they could be set in a distant past and future.
You are absolutely correct, Tom.
Yes.
That your characters, let's say your characters or your narrative can reference past events.
Right. Chrono Trigger, actually, because it was brought up, does have different maps, and each map is relevant to that era and that time period. So in that regard, Chrono Trigger does it right. You can actually see how the world changes. The world of Chrono Trigger changes based on whether it's like whatever million BC, the time period during the Kingdom of Zeal, the future, and you can tell that the maps are only slightly altered between 1000 AD and 2000 AD when Lavos attacked, as opposed to all the way in the past. The world map of the past, the Stone Age, is significantly different because the developers of Chrono Trigger took that into account, plate tectonics. So anyway, back to this.
Well, I just find it's just fascinating to build a world that is dynamic, because at one point in time you have a sea here.
Yes.
And at a later point in time, there's no sea there.
There's no sea there. So why would you want to build an Earth world? We went over that. You want to build an Earth world if you want to have that level of dynamicism, but then you have to follow it.
Yes, you do.
You can't have a dynamic world. Do you have to map out all the plate tectonics and all the climate changes? Of course not. But you have to be, at that point, allow the dynamicism of your world to exist. Continents drift. They move. Things change. Everything changes. You have to have an Arctic and a temperate. And you have to figure out exactly how you want that Arctic and temperate to work. Why is something Arctic? Something is Arctic because whatever star, whether it be a solitary, binary, or whatever system, isn't hitting that particular part of the world as much. Ergo, you get freeze. If it hits it a lot more, like our equator, it's going to be hotter.
Right.
If you have a binary star system, like in Star Wars, Tatooine's a desert planet. It's bombarded by light, by starlight a lot. Like, it's baked. Jakku's the same way.
Yeah.
They're baked. So think about that. Interesting thing. Try to imagine how a world would be that could support life, but orbits around a black hole. I'm not talking like Gargantua. Actually, Interstellar was fantastic for that. One of them was really close and had tidal issues and time dilation, but the one that was further back was frozen, because a black hole is going to emit energy. It's going to emit radiation that's necessary for life. It's going to emit light. Is it going to emit that level of light and heat that a star would? Probably not. So things to think on. What is your planet rotating around if it has one? All of this under the Earth class. Why would you want to create a world like Narnia? Because you want a static world. You want a world where everything is set a certain way. It just came into being. I am actually writing a story in a static world. It takes place on, not too different from Narnia in it being a flat plane. The concepts are completely different. But there's no, it just came to be. It exists. A deity created it. It is there. The story takes place there. The topography of the world isn't going to change unless something physically causes it to change. Like a mountain's not going to move unless the mountain gets blowed up. A swamp's not going to dry up unless something dried it up. The desert will always be the desert. The forest will always be the forests. So this world is utterly and completely static. The constraints for that, and I think it was someone brought it up earlier, Reillo, the constraints of having a static world is that world is now as it is. And in order for you to change it, you now have to exert either a divine or a powerful influence to alter it. It can't just be, okay, all of a sudden now there's hurricanes. If there's never been anything to create hurricanes, where are hurricanes going to come from in Narnia? There's no place for them to form.
Exactly.
So if you want to have that in a static world, it has to be because magic. It has to be because deities. You now then have to create a reason for it to happen. Oh, thank you, Tom. Thank you. We're doing our best. We're having fun with this one. What are some other good parts of some positives and negatives to a static world like Narnia?
You don't have to worry about. You really don't have to worry about your world too much. You're just concentrating on the story.
Right.
You can have as Lewis did. You have a whole series of stories that take place in a static world, so you don't have to worry about your characters having to adapt to moving around mountains or such, because the mountains are in one place.
Right, and also, if I'm not mistaken,
it makes it easier,
right,
in many ways, and to craft your story.
And it's been a long time, Teal, but I believe time passes very differently in Narnia, right?
Right, and that's getting into the non-physical, because you're comparing Narnia to Earth.
Right, but what I'm saying is that I believe the characters in the first book go back in the second and third, and a high degree of time has passed, but nothing has changed other than the decay of civilization, not the decay of the world.
No.
But
the decay of actual civilization of man-made structures.
Right. Which
had decayed, but the world was the same. You still had your mountains in the same place. Then you had
right.
Here's that lake. It's always been there. And here's your desert. Always been there.
Right. So the river that is a feature right outside of Aslan's Howe in Prince Caspian is still in the exact same location in Dawn Treader, Silverchair, etc.
Yep.
And no, Yorkshire, I do not like Turkish Delight. I couldn't get into it. I did try it because I read the books too. Do not like them. Not my thing. So a static world would allow you to write entire series without it ever changing.
Correct.
Another good example of a static world, but is written with more fluidity to the rules, is Xanth.
Yes, the Xanth.
The Xanth world. Now, there is a huge caveat to all of that. Everything in Xanth that is magical exists because of the big super cosmic demon that's underground. And when he's freed, everything goes away and Xanth becomes boring and shitty. And then he comes back and it's back to normal again. But that's still a god. That's still a because magic.
That's because magic.
Right. So creating a static world like that, and there's tons of Xanth books. Like, I don't even think I actually ever finished the series. It's an inordinate amount. So, but you can create a world and you can focus more on the aspects of the world, but you can't change it without an event. So that restriction can actually bite you in the butt if you want to tell a world that changes along with your story, because you have to supply event. Now let's talk about Nirn.
Yes, Nirn.
Let's talk about the ideal Nirn, and let's talk about the reality Nirn. So the ideal Nirn, which is what we have now, after way too much work and way too many rewrites by Bethesda and way too many fan submissions in the community, it is also an event-driven world. It's not static like Narnia. It is fluid, it does change, but every change is exerted by an outside force. The difference between Nirn and Narnia, of course, is Narnia requires Aslan, or Jadis, which is, another supreme being. Any motherfricker in Tamriel with way too much magic or hitting an alien artifact can change Narnia, can change Tamriel to some extent.
Yep.
So you have that changeable world, climate, geography, topography, etc. And it doesn't have to be because Akatosh gets a stick up his butt, or Lorcan's heart is ripped out, or an Oblivion, a Daedric prince decides it's time to invade because he's got nothing better to do. It could be because a mage gets a power that he shouldn't have, unlocks something they shouldn't have. The Eye of Magnus quest in Skyrim is a fantastic example of that. If Arcano wasn't stopped, it would have caused untold devastation, and that would have been a topography change of the world.
Yes.
So you stop him, and you stop a catastrophic event from occurring. Dragons vanish because of an outside force. That's more metaphysical, but that's still something. The destruction of Winterhold, we go over that. I can't really think of anything else. The plane meld in its entirety. Basically, if you read an Elder Scrolls game and something disastrous happens, it's never because the world just wants to. That's why if Red Mountain's eruption, which takes place between Oblivion and Skyrim, occurs just because, which I sincerely doubt, and I think you do too, Teal.
Right.
Then Bethesda's broken their own lore. Because Red Mountain shouldn't just erupt and explode. Something would cause it. And I know Bethesda. I don't know them personally, but we all know Bethesda. They're going to have, at some point, Red Mountain erupted because boom. And everyone's going to be like, oh noes! And then we're going to go kill it and there's going to be DLC. Because that's how Bethesda rock. But you think about it. So you have an event-driven world. Why would you want an event-driven world? If you want specific, direct, and complete control over every change in your world, make a world like Nirn.
Yes.
Where it's event-driven. That's it. Now,
that's it.
What's the downside? You're limited the same way as you are with Narnia, a little less so, because you can have teeny tiny events do something, but you still can't, again, you can't sink Yakuta into the ocean and not have tsunamis hit the Somerset Isle, and then sink something else later and have tsunamis hit the Somerset Isle.
That's correct.
So, and of course, now we get into the last part of this before we kind of break for a bit. Why do you have to follow your world lore? Can't you just do whatever? It's creativity, right? Well, let's look at the Elder Scrolls let's look at the Elder Scrolls as it came. That's a perfect example of what happens when you don't follow your world lore.
You've got confusion, and confusion with your readers or your gamers, and confusion breeds unhappiness,
right? And
ultimately rejection.
Yeah. Does this mean that people aren't going to play the Elder Scrolls? No, it's one of the most popular series in the world. Is there a level of scorn that the fandom feels towards Bethesda? Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, even the most diehard Bethesda fans will go, okay, they kind of messed that up, but I'm going to forgive them because it's Bethesda. Now, you may say, well, as long as the fans love the game and they're happy with the experience, does it really matter? Well, think about it like this. For every Bethesda that's out there that is able to get away with it because their games are so popular, mostly due to the modding community, there are significantly more developers, writers, storytellers who aren't going to be able to get away with it because they're not Bethesda. Do you want to put your creative work on the chopping block and trust that it will be so popular that your inconsistencies, your bad world lore, your bad world building will be forgiven because the game is awesome? Do you want to risk that?
It's a pretty high risk.
It is. Oh, thank you for the follow. Thank you so much. Excuse me. So that's all things to consider.
Yeah, so to wrap it up a bit, when building your physical world, you want to keep your main ideas in mind.
Absolutely.
Your creation.
Right.
Your geological timeline. Your current geography of the world.
Yes.
And how that drives your climate and your weather patterns and weather events.
Yeah, all of it.
because all those things right there are going to affect the kinds of life that evolve, and from that civilization,
which we will discuss in depth, of course, in future workshops, and we will continue building off of what we have.
Right, because you're not going to have desert elves if there's no desert.
Exactly. You can't talk about the frozen men from the north if the north is a swamp. Very important. So your job as the developer, whether you're an author telling a story in written form, a developer creating a game, or really any medium. This could go with animation, movies, it doesn't matter. When you're creating your world, the first thing is, how do you want the story and the world to work hand in hand?
Yeah.
Do you need that dynamicism? Or do you need more fluidity? Do you need staticness? Do you require that box? Or do you need it to be something where you push the button as the GM / developer / writer and make it event driven when something changes? You got to decide that.
You decide that.
And then you start using any model. Now, there are tons of models out there. Tons. We chose just these 3 because they were so vastly different. You could choose something like the world of Lord of the Rings. Good God, Middle Earth.
Middle Earth.
Middle Earth. Middle Earth is a very much a because magic, but it does change over time and things fade as magic fades. You could also choose something more modernish, like Harry Potter, which is our world plus magic. Rowling, bless her, had a fantastic starting point because it is essentially Earth with magic. And by segregating and separating mages from non-mages, she made it really easy on herself. But there's still weather patterns. There's still shit that happens. Hogsmeade in wintertime, right?
Right.
Or the hurricane that starts in the beginning of the 6th book because Voldemort's starting to get power. These are still things that happen, event-driven / natural. Now, what you don't want to do in the last world we're going to talk about, and the reason we didn't choose this world is because it was very obvious that there was not world building. George R. Martin's Planetos.
Yes, Planetos.
If you go watch any video where a world builder or a cartographer talks about Westeros / Essos, it's obvious that Martin did not focus on the world. And it's forgivable because A Song of Ice and Fire and A Game of Thrones is insanely popular, but you're taking a roll of the dice. Do you want to take a chance that your world is going to be forgiven? I wouldn't. All right, so we're going to open it up to questions for a few minutes before we shift over. If we don't see any questions pop up, then we'll go ahead and switch to the second half. When we do switch to a second half, we are going to go to the Be Right Back screen while Teal and I switch places. Then when we come back, we will pick up, and I'm going to use this wireframe, and we're going to create a world. I will give the parameters out for that because I want to make sure we stay on point tonight. We had a great session last time, but I want to stay on point. So, questions open to the chat. Give me a second, I got a cough. Damn allergies. Teal, do you have any parting thoughts on all of this while we're looking to see if chat has any questions?
Yeah, the only thing I really want to say is I do want to bring up another world where it was done absolutely correctly from start to finish.
Hit it up.
And that is the ElfQuest world of Abode.
Yes.
From Wendy and Richard Peeney.
Absolutely.
They built this world from creation all the way through to the future present.
Right.
They had to, because their story spanned tens of thousands of years.
Yes.
So they started with a world that was in the Paleozoic era, and
right,
and it was affected by ice ages and other such events, and it was very dynamic, and it changed over the course of time.
Right,
and these changes affected the different tribes of elves and men, and how they changed and adapted and evolved into their quote unquote present day civilization.
Right. The incarnations you get with Cutter and the rest of the cast.
Correct. Because, in the beginning, there was a lot of primordial forests.
Right.
And then the Ice Age came, and that greatly affected a lot of life and how the people evolved. And then after the Ice Age ended, then you had a more temperate climate.
Right.
So it's very dynamic world, but they crafted this physical world from start to finish.
Yes, they did.
And it was a major setting for their stories.
Yes. Now, I want to talk about another world as well, and it's not a planet. And the reason I want to talk about it is because you can take everything that Teal and I have talked about and apply it to literally anything. Excuse me. You can apply it to a base station, a fixed structure, anything. I want to talk about Larry Niven's Integral Trees, which is my favorite book by Larry Niven. If you have not had a chance to pick it up, it is amazing. The entire world takes place in literally a gravity-locked cloud of atmosphere surrounding, I believe, a neutron star. And it's a massive lock of atmosphere, breathable atmosphere. The beings there are humans. They're long story as to why they're there, but gravity is centered on the giant trees, the giant land masses that float around in this breathable atmosphere circulating around the neutron star. So they have directions inward and outward as opposed to up and down. It's amazing. The book is very well written, and you can tell when you read it, Mr. Niven did a fantastic job in building this quote-unquote world, even though it's not a planet at all. It's just brilliant. So you can take all of this that we talk about, building your physical world and building your laws of physics, which is everything from geography to weather, etc. And as long as you bring it consistent across the board, given the mythology, the science, the metaphysics, whatever, because magic of your world, your story will be consistent. And as Tom said, consistency is good. Consistency is very, very good.
Right.
Now, Tom does have a question. He was only here for part. So for those of you who are just joining, we can't obviously go through the whole thing again, but Teal, could you read off the list? What we did was we went over 3 different worlds: our Earth, Narnia from the Chronicles of Narnia, and Nirn. And we talked about several different categories. And Yorkshire posts something as well. So Teal, go ahead and just read off the list of what we went over.
Okay. So we went over the creation of the 3 different worlds: Earth's creation, Narnia's creation, and Nirn's creation.
Right.
Then we went through the geological timeline of each one. Earth being the most detailed, and activity spanning 4.5 billion years, and being a very dynamic, changing physical world. Narnia having none of that at all. Very static world. It was created and boom, there it is, and it doesn't change except for supernatural beings. And then Nirn, that is static unless it is acted upon by some kind of magic or supernatural god, deity,
an external force,
some external force.
Right.
So you've got 3 different ways of approaching your geological timeline.
Right.
Then you get to your present day geography. So what does your physical world look like now?
Exactly.
Does it have land masses, bodies of water? Does it have mountains?
Right, and all of this
deserts?
is based off of the geological timeline. We had a geological timeline that drove us through anywhere from 4.5 billion years to 5 seconds and gave us a geography.
Right.
So when Teal's saying geography, she's talking about present day story geography as influenced by the timeline.
Correct.
And then the geography influences?
And then the geography will influence your climate.
Right.
And your weather patterns.
Right.
So Earth had a great diversity, and it changes over time. It's very dynamic. Narnia has some diversity of climate, but its weather patterns are static, and they're only affected by supernatural means.
Right.
Nern has great diversity, and it is static, never changes.
Right.
Okay.
And then finally, we hit weather events, which is pretty much more of the same. Earth's weather events come from literally the world changing due to its existence. And Narnia's is completely static.
Yeah, Narnia has absolutely no catastrophic weather events. And Nern does have catastrophic weather events, but they're caused by some magic or divine means.
Now, Tom also brought up another good point. You put a mountain there. Well, on one side there's a desert, on the other side there's wetlands. That is correct on Earth model, and that should be correct on a Nern model. Narnia doesn't really follow that.
Narnia does not follow that.
At all.
No.
Narnia is because magic, because God, deity.
Right.
And that's all Narnia is. So we're talking about if you're going to design that world of Narnia, you want your static box world. But you can't change it if your deity doesn't change it. Well, that's exactly it, Tom. It does what it wants. The downside to that is there's nothing that you, the creator, can do to change it if you don't have one of your super influences. That's what we'll call them.
Yeah.
One of your super influences has to exert force. With Nern, when done right, you get a little bit of leeway.
Yeah,
and with Earth, you have to follow those rules. If you put a mountain range and you're doing a dynamic Earth-style world, you better do desert on one side, wetlands on the other, or someone's going to call you out. Look at landmass size, geography. Again, let's pick on Planetos. Planetos is really two major geographical regions, Westeros and Essos. And George R. Martin said, well, one's about the size of this and the other's about the size of Asia. And it's just picking, you look at it. You look at the way Essos is spread out. You look at that large landmass that the Dothraki use. There's problems there. Now, no, we're not going to go deeply into civilizations. But the creation of the landmass has created issues with civilizations that people have picked apart over time. But he gets a free pass because Game of Thrones is popular. And this all cycles back to the original point. Build your world consistent. Okay?
Yeah, consistency is the key. Don't
bank on my story is so to good and to wonderful that people are going to forgive me. Okay, so Tom, we're talking about three influences so far: the environment, magic, big, scary, powerful beings. Some other good examples would be, so let's see, the natural world itself, the environment, magic, external force, or any external force. And really, there's only two types of changes you can have. Something either happens because science, math, time, evolution, anything from microbiology and the smallest cells, all the way up to a comet or a rogue star. That's one thing. So that's a natural thing that can be quantified scientifically and mathematically. And then you have something that's not. It's magical or supernatural, or you can use any word you want, but it's a super force out there.
Yeah.
It could be, your world could be changed because of the coming of the Great Handkerchief. That kind of thing.
Right.
You have to, as you're the world builder, decide what is exerting influence. Is it natural? Is it supernatural / super beings? Is it a combination of both? Does it look like it's one, but it's actually the other? That's a good thing you can do. You don't have to be locked in to it when you're brainstorming and creating your world, but create the rules under which your world's physical existence, its physics, exist, and then be consistent during the course of your narrative. That's kind of the thesis point of what we're saying. So we'll give time for one more question, and then we're going to go to our BRB. Going to hit the restroom and then come back. And the second half will be, we're going to create a world from scratch based off of the the criteria we've talked about, not the three different worlds. And that'll be me piloting while Teal has the fun part. So we can go to the last screen while we wait for that last question to come up.
Okay.
Okay, Zarsla has a question. What about a country, city / where the main setting story cares about the country, city? What I need explanation for it. Okay, So Zarsla, unfortunately, this particular stream is not talking about civilization. We're talking just about the physical world itself. However, to answer your question and then say we'll answer it in depth in a future stream, if your country or city is the main story and setting, you want to have, how did that city come into being? What civilization brought that world about? That country, that city, why does it exist? You don't have to go into the massive level of detail that the Earth brought into to kind of push back a little bit.
Okay. Let me address part of that too.
Okay.
Okay. So why did people build a city there?
Right.
What about that location was ideal for a city?
Right. These are things that will go into deep into a future stream.
What kind of weather patterns does that city experience?
Exactly.
Does it snow there? Will it get tornadoes?
Exactly.
Do those things even exist?
Right, exactly. So this is why you want to have a world build. Now, for those of you who are coming in late, what we said earlier is, do you have to create plate tectonics, weather patterns, climate patterns, weather systems as detailed as our Earth's? No, of course not. But if you're going to have this city get hit by a tornado and it's not magic, is this place anywhere near a tornado? In a tornado form on that plane or wherever? That's what Teal's talking about. So all of these things that can influence your civilization, which again we'll get into soon, you have to have an idea of how your world works.
Correct. Another example is poor old Pompeii.
Yeah.
And they built the city at the base of a volcano.
And it was living on borrowed time, but no one ever thought that time would come.
And then the city gets destroyed by the volcano erupting.
Everybody dies.
Yeah. So, think about the natural world absolutely, the physical world absolutely will influence.
Yes.
Your civilization and your country boundaries and even your ethnic group.
All of it. Every last bit.
Yeah, boo-boo. Yeah, is there a water source nearby that city? Absolutely, because goodness knows, we need water.
We have put together already several of these that we're going to be doing over the next couple of months, in which we're going to address these points. So save some of these questions because, you're going to be building off of this, and we're going to continue to build worlds up to the technology level. So we're going to...
Yeah, the physical world is your base building block.
Right. I will say this on a side note. When I started creating our fantasy world that Teal and I are making for our fantasy story/tabletop, she actually sat down and said, you need to consider these 3 points. And she said, you got to talk about weather patterns. You got to talk about tilt and, how much sun energy it gets, the weather, climate. And you have to talk about plate tectonics. She said, you have to have these 3 things to do the story you want to do because of, and she laid out the reasons. It was a little extra work. Did I have to go super into detail? No. But because of it, the continents now work realistically. The climate is actually very conducive to what I want to tell storyline-wise. And the weather patterns, which is Teal's favorite thing in the world,
yes,
makes sense.
Yeah.
So we're going to go ahead and take our break here. And when we come back, I will be in the pilot seat. And we're going to create a world from scratch. The break will be maybe about 3 or so minutes long, up to 5 tops. And we hope you all stick around. Here we go.
And we're back.
All right. Hey, everybody. How y'all doing? Okay. Still now in the pilot seat. I will figure out a way to automate that change one day. It's going to happen. So I got to move things around a little bit, get comfortable. All right. Here we go. Hopefully I'm coming through loud and clear. All right. So we have the world we're going to create tonight. Now, I want to lay a couple of ground rules out. We had an amazing session last time. I loved what we came up with. However, there were a number of suggestions thrown out by chat, which were obviously meant as jokes, and that's fine. Have fun, cut up, misbehave. We love you guys for that. But please keep in mind that if we talk about flora made of cotton candy, I'm not going to write it down. So with that in mind, we're going to create a world based off of these criteria, and we're going to carry this world with us to future workshop. Just like we're going to take the workshops the worlds we talked about tonight, and continue to expand them in future lectures.
That's right.
So we're just going to call this the world for now. What I want us to do, look at our man of culture over there. And yes, Teal is directing, so all right, here we go. Not happening. Not happening, Tom. Because it would melt the moment it rained.
Yep.
Okay, what I want to do is I want to decide on one thing by chat, starting up immediately. Do we want to have a fully dynamic world, a fully static world, or in between? I have a predilection to go in between because it gives us a lot of versatility. So it's kind of like Nern, but not Nern. And the reason I say that is because we can make it work. We can play around with the climates and such, but at points we can say because magic.
Right.
So unless chat can give me a very compelling reason otherwise, I really would prefer we do this in between world. It will give us a lot to work with in the future as well. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't go back and follow this workshop and create your own world, whether it be highly static, highly dynamic, takes place inside of a gin tumbler on God's shelf, whatever you want to do. You do you. We love you guys. All right, we're going to do an in-between.
Okay, so in between.
All right, so a mixture of dynamic and static. In between.
That's right.
That's our favorite kind. All right, so let's go with a mix. So now we're going to talk about the creation. This is the creation of our world. Now, pardon me for coughing, there are a number of things to consider here across the board. First off, let's look at the 3 levels of creation that we saw in the previous lecture, the one that Teal just gave. One happens because of science. It happens over time. It happens because of variables. Putting aside for a moment any religious belief in our universe, it happens mathematically. So when you look at creation, you want to consider that possibility. What are the mathematical implications of formation of your world? But then let's go over to Narnia, which is a creation, a deity. A deity snaps his fingers, or in the case of Aslan, sings, and you have that as well. But then you have Nern, which is the result of literally an experiment gone wrong.
Right.
So taking those ideas, let's craft the creation of our world. We can go ahead and we can mix in, and I'm just going to start talking, guys. This is where you all throw things out. We read it over chat. But we should probably go for having some sort of divine spark starting off a sequence of events that result in the creation of our world. Or we could invert it and have a series of events bringing our deity to our world and having the deity create the world. That's kind of like in Xanth.
Right.
You know, the demon Xanth was playing an intergalactic super game. Oh, okay, Bubba Hotep. So an intergalactic super being was playing a game with all of his other intergalactic super being friends, and he had to get imprisoned on the Xanth world because that was his penalty phase for failing a round. And that's why he's there, and that's why Xanth is the way it is. So you don't have to have God creates world, and then world happens. You could have world is created because God just happens upon it. So let's toss out some creation ideas. Now, this doesn't have to involve a deity. It doesn't have to involve pure mathematics. It can be a magical spell gone wrong. It could be anything. Let's toss out some ideas. Maybe we have, for example, a world where a magical spell goes awry light years away. And that magical spell causes the protostar in this other star system to suddenly become a main sequence, suddenly become a sizable star in its main sequence, and the dust cloud starts to form. Okay.
Well, so far we have it was created by a battle.
All right. Battle.
Okay. Among the gods.
Ooh, so you have a world born of the destruction of something else.
Yes.
That's very good, Tom. Okay.
And then another idea is a banished goddess wants to create a world that should have been. Yes, because where she came from, she didn't like it.
Let's marry these two ideas. Okay, here we go. A group of deities destroy. Here we go. An empire. We're going with this. Of deities have a civil war. The Empress deity is killed. Here I'm going. Or say Emperor deity, because I don't want to differentiate. I want to differentiate from the goddess idea of Ventus. The Emperor deity is killed, and the world is ripped asunder. Possibly Pantheon, Reillo, but words are words. We'll put that down in a minute. Because actually no. Why do we have to put Pantheon? Pantheon is only in the direction of the worshiper, Reillo. It could be an empire of gods. In fact, it could be an empire of gods that to us are gods, but to them, they're just really powerful scientists or other beings.
Right.
Think about that. And that's something to think about. In fact, that's the direction we're going to go in. So we're going to say an empire of deities that are actually super powerful science advanso hyper being. There we go. So, besides anything that's taken, any technology that is brought up to a high enough level is indistinguishable from magic. Okay, so the emperor deity is killed and the world is ripped asunder. His heir, goddess, this is the one that Ventus mentioned, is, what's the word when it's exiled?
Exiled.
Into a piece of that sundered world from which she creates the world. Something like an Assassin's Creed. I am going to feel really embarrassed, Reverie. I've played the first Assassin's Creed and I couldn't finish it, and I've never played another one. I legit. So I'm not sure what that mythos is, Reverie. All right. So here is our. You know what, Tom? You make that joke,
and yet
that is a fantastic idea.
Yeah.
The whole universe is a computer program created by somebody who just opened up RPG Maker MV. Why the hell not? Things to think. Okay, so we have our world, which is now created in this way. So now we're going to go over a geological timeline. Now we can spend as much or as little time as we want here. We can come back to it. Don't think that just because we're going in order, you can't skip back. All right. So the goddess, this goddess, is trapped in this world. How does that form it? Yeah, we can say because magic, but let's think about that. You have a shard of something that used to be something else. Let's say the original world, hyper advanced. Let's say this world was a super exoplanet. I put question mark because I don't know how well that works gravitationally. As planet. We might be Ventus. We might all be in an RPG Maker game. So we have this peak of what was once something. And we're going to make it roughly the size of the Earth because I want to work with dimensions I'm familiar with. I know that's all boring, right? But I need something to work with. There you go, original world core. I like it. I like that. So the goddess is within the original world core. So how does that create the world? How does that make this core into a world that's habitable? And most importantly, how long does it take? Because these hyper scientific, super powerful, advanced hyper beings, billions of years could literally be the blink of an eye. We don't have to think in terms of short level creationism. We could pull an Aslan.
Right.
But would that really go with where we're going with this? Would the goddess get sucked into this, exiled into this core, and then suddenly life springs out? Because wouldn't that catch the attention of other things? It might, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Think about that.
It might.
Or the press of a button. Exactly. So where does it begin? How long? Let's think in terms. And you can go millions of years, billions of years, thousands of years. However long it takes to sing. But let's think realistically. The way that I'm looking, I really don't see this being a short-term creation. It may be short-term to our goddess, but I don't think it's short-term to the world, to our time. Yeah, the goddess is trapped within. She's been exiled. I married the two ideas together. Well, what if she doesn't create a world? Exactly, Ventus. I don't think she does. At this point, Tom, we're calling her a goddess because to us, to the denizens of this world, she would be an almighty deity. We've already established that she could be a gamer that's just trapped inside a computer world. It's irrelevant what she is a goddess of. We will create her pantheonic self later on. There's no society to give her that attribute. We need to talk about the world. She was into a world. What happened? It's her prison. She's trying to get out, and the world is made by her magic. Okay, that's a good one, Zarsla. Just trying to survive. Exactly. So let's talk about those two ideas. Let's talk about Zarsla and Reverie's ideas, because those are very, very mergeable. And then Human comes up with that too. So that also works.
Yeah, that's a good one, Human.
Very good. We can marry all three of those ideas together into a fantastic story, at least to start off. So the goddess is in the original world core for magic. And I use that in quotes because, again, any level of technology high enough is magic. So her magic generates the heat within the core, much like the core of our Earth. And her struggles to free herself generate plate tectonic, and I'm probably going to misspell this terribly. I did. Because Teal does not know how to spell plate tectonic. There we go. Movement. Now let's talk about the goddess just trying to survive. I like that. In order to survive, I don't even know anymore, Tom. I have misspelled that word so many times in my lifetime, it's crazy. Okay, in order to survive, and this is going to be a throwback to those who like Chrono Trigger, she has to cultivate life within her world to feed on. Slightly parasitic, but not necessarily bad. Because really, honestly, is Lavos truly evil? He was just trying to survive. What to say about that? Okay, so life within her world to feed on. So over time, her struggles and her magic start to create life, starting with simple cellular organisms and gradually getting more and more complex organisms. What about her prison is the psychological effects of a war put on her dreamlike state? That's also possible. In that way, Ventus, by making her dream, it's not malicious. So she's creating life on this world, starting with simple cell organisms and eventually getting to the peoples to feed off of and survive. But she's in a dream state, as Ventus says, so it's not malicious. This isn't an evil goddess. This is a goddess that is just trying to survive, and her quote-unquote body, her program, whatever you want to call it, is just happening. Exactly like Reverie says, that program. Exactly like Tom says, more and more life. You guys are getting it. Fantastic. So gradually more and more collapse. The goddess is trapped in a eternal dream. I'm using quotes because, again, it's more than we can understand, this creature. We can't understand it, so we're using words that just work for us. Goddess is trapped in an eternal dream. Therefore, every part, the struggling, the powering, magicking, the magic, the absorbing of life energy is done unconsciously to survive, not out of malice. We have a creature that is beyond good or evil.
Right.
It is Überhuman, as Nietzsche would call it. Pardon me. Oh, exactly. And Tom, that's kind of what happens in Xanth, you know? And yes, so exactly. We've already created a hook to our story. We have created a meta hook, like a straight up meta hook. What happens if the goddess awakens? What happens if the goddess is freed? Does it destroy the world? Xanth explores that and explores it so very well. So good job, chat. Very good job. So let's continue along this timeline. Let's continue along this. Over time, her movements and our seepage create a more complex and more complex, because everything's more powerful when you say it twice. Planetary system.
Yeah.
So that's actually kind of awesome. First off, before we go any further, chat, you guys are amazing. I actually want to write this story. This is cool. Now, let's take a step back and let's make this more complex, because you guys have shown something really awesome. Let's add in another layer. Okay. Meanwhile, one of the usurper gods is aware of the goddess's life force trying to sustain itself in order to, here we go, in order to keep her contained. He exerts an external magic, and again in quotes, that will keep the world as a whole under a state of constant negative change. This includes things like natural disasters, meteors, because giant rocks from space are awesome, extinction events, etc. The idea of the god is that if the life of the planet, if the lives upon the planet don't reach a certain level, then the goddess cannot wake up and overthrow the usurper. So now think about this, and I know you guys are going all over the place, and you'll have to catch me up on chat in a second. But now we've exerted an external influence. So we have the internal influence, which is the goddess's very existence is making this planet exist, grow, change, function properly, and eventually support intelligent sapient life that will grow through courses of through historical civilization. This external influence, this other god, is now attempting to stifle that, perhaps even having something like a hyper-extinction event occur once every X million, thousand, whatever years. So now you could have your story revolve both around the consequence of the goddess waking up, but also stopping the external god, so that the world can continue to advance and civilization, which we'll get into another time, isn't constantly getting wiped out.
Okay, so the points that Chad is bringing up, so Zarsla, people either stopping existing when she wakes up or cease to exist. That is a result of what you're building for your creation, for your geological timeline.
Right.
Okay. If that's one of the points that you want to have in your story, then you need to build your geological timeline to support that.
Right.
That point.
And that is a very important question that I know Chad has been bringing up. So I will put this down here. What happens if the goddess wakes up?
Right.
I'm not going to answer it, but this is a question that is highly significant and Chad has been bringing up. So yeah, absolutely. Someone says chaos versus Gaia. I'm not sure.
Yeah, Ventus also brings up, a way to keep her comforted and asleep. Again, that goes back to what if the goddess wakes up?
Right. Now, I do want to address a very important point that was also brought up in chat. So, Paul, what about guns that shoot pitchforks? If the pitchforks aren't flaming, then it doesn't count. I think that's pretty accurate. Wouldn't you say so, Teal?
Sure.
Those guns have to shoot guns that shoot pitchforks, but those pitchforks have to be on fire. Otherwise, it won't, what's the point? I have to have flaming pitchforks. So, welcome to the stream, by the way, Paul. Good to have you here. All right, so humans and other... Okay, so let's go back onto chat here.
Okay, so Boo Boo Hotep, again, you're talking about the evolution of life, and that is going to be driven by the physical world that you're building here.
Absolutely. 100%. 100%. And I like what humans said. Sentient life has already been wiped out in the past. Humans are on the nth iteration. Will it work out this time? That's fantastic. That would be something that your character, whether it be in a story, through book narrative, game narrative, it doesn't matter your medium. Your characters would figure out, wait a minute, this is our 7th time doing this. Will it work this time? That is a highly compelling story reason. So we are going to say that, human. The story, and this is just a note, we're not going to expand on it now, take place on the nth time that all life, I'll put that in air quotes, has been wiped out by the god. Yes, just like the Aztec myths. I believe they say, the whole world resets. Exactly. Okay.
So, Ventus, if human beings are made from a certain particle that may separate when she wakes up. Okay, let's go back. Human beings made of a certain particle.
Right.
Okay, you're going to need to include the creation of that particle
right
in your geological timeline.
Right. In other words, and you can call it whatever you want to call it. You can call it the goddess particle. That goddess particle is a part of the goddess's struggle. We actually use something kind of like that in one of our fantasy stories that we're creating, but it's different. It's not the same thing. This is not remotely what we're doing here, but it's we call it. There's other words for it, but it's the breath of the goddess. So, what is that breath of the goddess? What is it? When we created the geological timeline of that fantasy world, we had a breath of a goddess that is a thing, and it does a thing. So you have to have your goddess particle be a thing that does a thing, and then be consistent throughout your storyline. Reverie mentions a great point. It's possible that the dream is recorded and then becomes its own virtual world at the end. That is also possible, Reverie. You could have it be that each failure iteration of the world, as a human talked about, is recorded. And that could be a way that your protagonists learn about this infinite loop of failure.
And then that touches on Paul's point, which is the Matrix, and Neo being another version of the one.
Yes, and that is an amazing point right there. How many times has this happened, and is this time going to be different? So we will say, and this is, again, we're not answering it. These are just questions to consider as we continue this series with future streams. Will this time be different?
Right.
Yeah, and thank you, Reverie, for not actually spoiling the end of Eternal Sonata, because I haven't gotten to the end of it, because I can't beat Count Waltz 1. That fricker. That battle kicks my ass every time. But yes, there's a loop in Eternal Sonata, which they talk about with the Astras, and until that loop is resolved, nothing ever fixed. You're fine. You didn't actually... No, I know what you're talking about. I just don't know how the story ends. So you're fine. No worries about it. The game is like, 2003? There's no way I wouldn't have read something about it by now. Okay, so we're almost done with the geological timeline. Give me a second to take a swig. Which, by the way, that is one of my favorite games. Chopin is awesome and Viola is bae. Edge of Tomorrow, absolutely. Okay, so now let's get to the modern time. Let's reach an agreement, chat. What is the current time frame in relationship to the Earth? Now, we don't want to build a civilization. That's not the point. So we don't say Stone Age. We don't say Bronze Age. We just say, we basically are creating the agreement, chat, that this story world, present day, will be a sapient civilization. That's basically all we're doing. I should have rephrased that. I'm not pulling chat on that. I'm just saying we're going to create, right, exactly.
Yeah, the human age. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The stories present is within the, we're just going to call it sapient, because maybe it's elves like ElfQuest, who knows, but we'll just say it's in the sapient age. Okay. Now that we've done that, this is going to be fun. All right, now we can come back to our geological timeline. Like I said, we are absolutely allowed to backtrack. We want to talk about the geography of this world. This is such an interesting world. Let's talk about that geography. So we have a world that is being built from the ground up by the remains of this other heaven world and this goddess's sleeping particles,
right?
Literally changing things. Yeah, her neurons, exactly. It's like, ooh, Ventus. Hot damn, son. The goddess's particles. Boy, does that not have that Matrix Neophil Prawl was talking about, right? Are basically her neurons. Well, we're just going to have to call her the sleeping goddess, not the dreaming goddess, aren't we?
The dreaming goddess.
Okay. So this is the world of the dreaming goddess. All right. Let's talk about geography. We can come back multiple times. All right. Geography. Now, here's the beauty of the world we've created. First off, we still have to follow some functional reality. We can't have a mountain with desert on one side, desert on the other, and the top of it is made of cotton candy. Sorry, guys, you're not going to get your cotton candy forest. It's not happening. So we still have to follow some measure of ecology, because this goddess's particles are creating a world that has to sustain sapient life so she can feed off of it. So mountains, desert on one side, wetland on the other. We got to follow those rules. We don't have to hyper focus on plate tectonic movement like the Earth, but we do have to have some measure of reality. Otherwise, life won't support itself, because we're creating a rule here. Yes, it's a goddess's dream, but life still has to exist. And unless you are rewriting life in general, which we're not going to do because this is a mixture world, you have to have something. Life requires oxygen. Life requires water. Life requires sunlight. We haven't even talked about the sun yet. We're going to get back to that. So let's talk about geography. Do we want to have a paradisio world of everything's temperate with 4 seasons? That's going to be a pain in the butt to make. Do we want to have a world that has Andy Mountain? Do we want to have... Look at that. They're still tossing out stuff, aren't they?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
That's wonderful. Okay. As I kick the table, sorry. Do we want to have a world that's geography is and climate is not too different from our own? That's something to think about. Because then you could have, if you have multiple climates, if you have multiple geographies, since we're in a sapient age, you can have ethnodiversity. Ethnodiversity might be a variation of food for her. Maybe each species and ethnicity tastes a little different. Maybe they all taste the same. I don't know. Throwing an idea. Sorry, Yorkshire says, the reason I ask what the format for this is because if you're writing for film or theater, you would take other things into account, regulating like budget. There is, okay, Yorkshire, this is for books and video games, but workshops like this, Yorkshire, don't have budget. We are teaching ideas. We are teaching world building. Yes, in everything that you create, you need to think about the budget. That is absolutely true. But when you're workshopping, there is no budget. The budget is make sure you learn how to do it and you can replicate it for your own project. Okay, so Teal, anything from chat that we can titrate out?
Yeah, Boo Boo says mountains in the north and desert in the south. Okay,
so you have a plate tectonic area.
So plate tectonics, and because plate tectonics were mentioned at the creation, with the goddess moving around, then you're going to have a somewhat dynamic world.
Right.
You are, because continents are going to float around.
Right.
And with plate tectonics, you're going to have mountains.
Right.
And earthquakes and rifts.
That's pretty cool.
And you're going to have oceans and bodies of water that form and shift around.
Very nice.
You could have a shallow sea that becomes a deep sea later on.
Yeah, I can see that. Ooh, all right, so let's see. So I like the idea of... Now, please understand, deserts occur, Bubahotep, in areas that are where water can't get to. And usually what stops water from getting there? Mountain. That's generally talking. That's not always the case, but that's generally the case. Also, there are several different types of desert. There's your sand deserts, which is sandy dunes. There's your salt flats. There's your wastes. I mean, there's tons of desert. So on a whole, we want to put our deserts where it's hot, and most importantly, where water can't get.
Right.
So let's see, let me kind of catch up with chat here. All right, so because of the usurper god, there might be some barren wastes that were formed in places that are closer to the core at lower sea level, that are closer to the goddess, therefore more lush filled with life. I like that. Ice desert, exactly, Zarsla. Might even be slightly protected. That's another good point, Tom. The closer you are to the goddess, the better. We can have a point of 4 different extremes, where lava sits next to ice, next to forest, next to rock. This could be the origin point of the dream. Interesting, Reverie. I'm going to hold off on that for a second, but I can do something with that. You can also scale the story. Exactly, Zarsla. Right. Okay, let's see. Ice in the tomb. Terrain and races of the world is based off the gods she knew in her past. She dreamt of her friend Poseidon, created ocean. Okay. Let's see if I can't marry these ideas together and make something. All right, let's see. While the world itself is mainly temperate that's climate, is mainly water. Yeah, it's mostly water planet. How much percentage of the Earth is water? Somebody toss that out. It's pretty high. Okay, let's try it again. While the world itself is a series... 70, thank you so much, human. Is a series of continents upon approximately 70% water. Similar to Earth. Something to work with. Right, exactly. We can play with it. It's a number we can play with.
Yeah.
Okay. There are greater extremes in geographical terrain due to the clash of goddess particles and god influence. For example, deserts may move well beyond their normal
boundaries.
Thank you, hon. Boundaries due to places that have been hit harder by the god's external force. Other places, such as lush rainforests, may provide exponential nourishment due to an absence of the god's influence. There is and here's where we're going to hit where someone's talking about the extremes. I think reverie there. There is a singular place upon this world we'll just called the life spring, because I have no imagination right now, and that's okay, where a previous extinction level event from the god punctured a hole leading towards the core. There, the goddess particles are so concentrated that the geography of that area defies all logic and sense. There you go.
Here we go.
Now I gotta excuse me while I fix some of this, because Teal can spell anytime he's not on chat. The moment he gets onto a live stream.
See, Reverie, we can work with just about anything.
Just about anything. Well, maybe that is where the main temple is, or maybe, just think about this for a second. Just kind of think forward. Because if it's a main temple that is bombarded with thousands of particles, how would that be for life? Would that be good or bad for life? But before we go any further, someone also mentioned antimatter or antiparticle. I think that was Prawl.
Yeah, that was
I think that was Prawl.
Yeah.
Do you want this concentration of energy to be healthy or not healthy? Because think of it like the positive material plane, or the positive energy plane from Dungeons and Dragons. It's good normally, but once you get concentration of it, you burst into flames and die. So here's a thought, Tom. Maybe that puncture is where the final dungeon, quote unquote, is. We can go with temple, but we also have to think of the alternative as well. Maybe it's a bad place. But anyway, either or, this has to be something very important.
Yes.
Okay. Now, the further away from the life spring, trademark, the more mundane the world geography appears to be.
Yep.
There you go. That's the geography of our world of the sleeping goddess, the dreaming goddess.
Right. The dreaming goddess, yeah.
The dreaming goddess. Now we're going to go into climate and weather. So here's the beautiful thing, thanks to Reverie and everyone else on chat, who I am crediting you all, but I'm too busy paying attention to my screen right now. So Ventus and Zarsel and all of you and Tom, you guys actually just wrote all the rules for the climate. You actually just wrote the rule. The life spring, the cotton candy forest, exactly. Not gonna happen. Okay. they're gonna
no cotton candy forest.
That's their hill to die on, isn't it, Teal? All right. It could be like the Hebrew Holy of Holies, and that only one priest could enter, and sometimes that's also possible, Prawl. Ooh, you know what? We're not here to talk about civilization. That's another time. But let's put this down as a note. There are smaller punctures where less deadly concentration occurs.
Yeah.
And one of those could be the main temple that Tom is talking about with what Prawl's talking about. One of them is the main temple. So here you have, area where communion occurs with the goddess. Uh-huh. And then you have this big old sucker, which is like your northern crater of doom. Yorkshire, we don't actually have a definitive answer to the series number. I think we're up to 2 or 3 now. I think 3. We have about 3 planned so far, but God, how many could we do? Tons of them.
Yeah.
We could go for a long time on this. Exactly, Reverie. It's a portal. The portal to another dimension. All right. Climate and weather. So back to climate and weather. You guys have written the majority of this. Well, yeah, I mean, that's just it. You're already laying the foundation for religion and metaphysics.
You're laying the foundation for your religion and your civilization and culture and the kind of people you're going to have.
All of it.
In this world. Yeah.
When we talked earlier.
And animals.
When we talked earlier with when Teal was giving her talking points, mentioning the fact that Aslan sang Narnia into existence creates a god. Boom. There's Aslan. The fact that Nirn exists because of a failed experiment between a deity and another deity creates a pantheon of gods.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it's all interconnected. But we're not focusing on it, but we've already started to lay the foundation for it become of gods. Okay. Like the geography, the closer one gets to the life spring or one of the smaller punctures, the more erratic the weather, the climate, and weather patterns get. Ergo, when one approaches the life spring, you start having the weather trope of swirling tempest, doomsday clouds, and constant thunder and lightning and other stuff like extreme hot and cold and
next to each other.
Stuff. Yeah. Next to each other. Right next to each other. Right, because someone said pool of lava next to a glacier.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Right next to each other. The further away Tom, when you figure it out, spend them points. The further away please understand also under that anybody who wants to make us tweet something with your channel points, obviously everything has to be something we'd approve of. We do sometimes you guys troll us a little bit during our chat, our games by having us say, "Oh, I really like this character," when we don't like it. That's all fun, haha. But a tweet, obviously, it has to be something that's appropriate. So we're not going to tweet something offensive or ridiculous. But having said that, where was I? The further away one goes from the life spring, the more
Ventus.
Yeah. Let's talk about that, Ventus. We should talk about that. The more normal the weather actually, the climate and weather.
Yeah, climate and weather.
Actually become.
Yep.
Pardon me. Okay, so let's talk. Oh, honestly, you could have multiple religions based on this from the point of view, or the morality of the sleeping goddess and the outside god. The Israeli goddess and good. Absolutely,
yeah.
Zarsla. We have created. You absolutely. Oh, 100%. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. In fact, you can put it exactly like that. We're saying they are totally dope and totally aren't forcing us to type this. I will tweet that in a second because that's hilarious. I will probably put also in parentheses, thank you for the channel points or the loyalty or something. But I will absolutely tweet something like that because that's funny as heck. Okay. So the more normal the climate and the weather actually becomes. So on the whole, outside of the influence, because remember, doing a mixed world of the goddess particles, the world has temperate climate in the temperate zones, north and south hemispheres, a hot, wet, dry climate in the equator region. Is that correct, Teal?
Yes.
And a cold, wet, dry, mostly dry, but somewhat climate in the Arctic and Arctic region. And I know I'm misspelling those words. So let's go ahead and fix that, because apparently I don't know how to spell Arctic either. Okay. So we've actually built a really very well put together world. Is the life spring in the core? No, Reverie, the life spring is in a place. It's in a certain place on the world. We haven't figured that out geographically yet. But the life spring is a hole. It's a puncture. It's like the northern crater in Final Fantasy VII. It goes from the surface of the world down. It penetrates closest to the goddess.
Right.
So that's what it is. Where the goddess is in the core. Pardon. Okay. Referencing the Earth model for climate and weather is fine when not dealing with a region near a puncture or the life. Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah.
That's really good. So this gives us that delicious mixture we were talking about earlier. Excuse me while I take some more liquid. My throat is allergy. So the world is this really good mixture of a magical world where the laws of physics are ignored thanks to the goddess particles, but follows our world enough that we can work with regular weather patterns and plate movement, etc. everywhere else. So we can get really extreme here if we want to.
Right.
Like, we've understated it a little bit in our text here due to brevity and not wanting to go too far out, because it's always easier to start conservative and go more wacky. It's easier to go conservative to wacky than wacky back to conservative. Easier to push out than it is to pull back in.
Right.
So we could legit have it be, that's cool, Tom. We could legit have it be, our world is, normal when not around those punctures, but the closer you get to a puncture, the more it's like an oblivion gate or something just batshit crazy. So, Teal, if you can give me a second to talk about that while I go ahead and do this post. Thank you so much for the loyalty, Tom. We're going to go ahead and tweet this now.
Okay. Yeah, Reverie, you got a good point. Yeah, we're obviously not there. We could talk about that in our civilization building workshop. But yes, this geography, this climate and weather is going to influence that modern civilization. And one of the influences is that, yeah, they could build towers or domes to reduce the influence of the punctures. They could absolutely do that. You've set up the precedent of the punctures having just wild weather and unpredictable weather events that makes life impossible to be there. And if modern people want to, if civilization wants to expand into those areas, yeah, they need to do something to reduce the influence. That's pretty good.
That is actually very good. I'm still getting that tweet out. Wouldn't let me copy, so I have to rewrite it, but that's okay. We're doing this live, and we got plenty to talk about, so no worries, everyone. No worries at all. Found you, by the way, Tom. We're going to have to follow you later on. Can't do that during the stream because I got too much happening, but as you say, but whatevers.
Yeah, Boo-Boo, Hotep. Yeah, humans are fighters. Humans are going to find a way to work. Yeah, they're going to find a way to work around the natural world's constraint. Then again, you've got the chaos factor of this other god doing stuff to the world.
Right.
Bad stuff that people are going to have to deal with. Yeah.
Yep, almost done.
So Ventus, you're suggesting a cycle. So every X number of years, the goddess particles burst out. And that's creating a cycle.
So Tom, the only thing I'm going to change, I'm about to tweet it, is at the very end, instead of saying requested via channel point reward, I'm just going to put thanks for the channel points and the viewership. Thank you so much, Tom. We love you lots, and the tweet is going out now. Awesome. Okay, there it goes. All right, Tom, you get all the love. Let us please continue.
Okay, so yeah, Ventus brings up a cycle.
Yeah.
For the goddess particles bursting out.
That's actually a fantastic idea.
This would be a regular, normal cycle.
Well, and this wouldn't be the first time that some type of god thing happens on a cycle. I mean, Prawl brought up, look at your boy, Tom. Prawl brought up Neo in the Matrix. It's also done in Elder Scrolls Oblivion, the DLC for Shivering Isles, where every 1,000 years there's a gray mark. So the concept of X thousands of years a god thing happens is a very good storytelling device, especially if it somehow resets the memories, like it happens in both the Matrix and in Oblivion. So that's actually a very good, strong story point. By the way, to everyone on stream who is participating, if you think of an idea related to civilizations or sapient beings or other things, please feel free to write them down on your notes. Keep them to yours, hold them onto them, because we're going to continue building this world in the future, and there is no way Teal and I are going to remember all this random stuff. So if you want to bring up your cycle, Ventus, write it down and bring it back up. That is a great idea. Okay. Shall we move on?
Let's move on.
All right. So weather events. Again, pardon me. This is actually very similar. We're kind of on the same page here as we were before. These weather events occur. So natural weather events should be occurring. Absolutely.
Yes.
Natural weather events should occur based on climate and weather pattern, etc. That's a good question, Bubba Hotep. Save that sucker. Save that question.
Yeah.
Save it.
Save that question.
That's a good one. By the way, if you have the Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion and haven't played Shivering Isles, play it. It's the best DLC I think Bethesda's ever done. And if you have never played Oblivion, but you're a fan of the Elder Scrolls, buy the Game of the Year edition. Play it, especially for Shivering Isle. That DLC is unbelievable. It also deals with Sheergarath. I mean, you can't go wrong with the God of Madness. Okay, so natural weather events should occur based on climate, weather patterns, etc. However, once you get close to a puncture or the life spring, things start to go awry.
And
How?
then you have right. So how are you going to have catastrophic weather events?
Yeah. Or
is it just going to be one continuous swirling storm with red skies and stuff?
Let's go back to the idea of the positive energy plane in Dungeons and Dragons. It pushes out life energy, the energy of existence, positive life energy, which is fine. In a diluted way, it makes things live and flourish. So in a diluted way, these goddess particles cause the life on the planet to flourish. You have your lush rainforests, your very healthy spring water, your abundant crops, beer. But in concentration, it burns your soul, burns you to pieces.
Right.
It's kind of like in certain our world religions, the light of a deity from afar, nourishment, the light of a deity up close, ash.
Yeah.
The closer you are to brilliance, the more likely you are to get burnt. So this is why I'm positing this, so I can give this question out to chat. Does it cause these negative weather events as you get close? Or is it, as Teal said, just constant chaotic energy roiling out of control? Let's see what chat says. So Ventus says, maybe there's a specific region that is far away from any puncture that is unaffected by the negative effects of the cycle and the humans fight over that territory. Hold on to that, Ventus. Yeah, anything people are talking about in chat and you guys are having a wonderful conversation, do not stop. But take down those notes, and when we get to civilization, start bringing them up. My God, we're going to get mobbed. We're going to get mobbed, Teal. Randomly going to happen.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to happen. Okay, so let's think about weather events near the punctures and weather events near the life.
They're near the life spring, yeah.
Right. Is it just constant tumultuous where nothing is ever steady? Raw, unbridled energy just constantly changing everything? Or is it rippling out and creating waves of negative weather? Maybe that's where storms come from. Or do storms come from the usurper god? Constant but predictable. Okay, Zarsla, mutations by the goddess considered a blessing. Ooh, that's a good one there.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. May have to hold off on that for sapience, though. That's a sapient being topic, Crawl, but it's a good one. So hold on to that.
Reverie, yeah, it makes more sense for both to exist.
Okay.
Zarsla says constant but predictable.
Okay. Oh, you're fine, Crawl. No worries. Like I said, just hold on to it. We will hit that with sucker soon.
Tom is refining that idea.
Raining 1 second.
Rain 1 second, bright sunny the next, and then snow.
I like that too. Would the energy power their lights, warm their homes? Okay, again, that's civilization.
That's civilization. So write that down and keep that.
Mm-hmm. I think, and I might even be able to marry some of the ideas that are more towards sapience and civilization. I might be able to marry everything. Why don't we say that? Here we go. Close to the streams of goddess particle. Everything is in constant and unstable flux. This includes the weather patterns, the climate itself, and the effect on life in general. For example.
Yeah, we need an example of that.
Right. For example. I'm going to start marrying these ideas. All right, here we go. Near the life spring. Here we go. Near the life spring, the weather can go from torrential rain to freezing blizzard to raining freaking fire in the blink of an eye.
Eye.
Did I say air?
Yeah.
Tornadoes of lava. What would I call it? A lavnado?
Yeah.
Of lava and ice can form and then drop into vapor. Plants and animals can change on a DNA level, either beneficially, there's that blessing mutation that Paul talked about, or negatively. It a roll of the die, so to speak, when near that much.
Right.
Sharknado.
Yeah, no, Sharknado.
Oh, absolutely, Tom. Absolutely. Hey, if we have inspired any of you to do your own streams or anything, 100%, please, you have our blessing. The more we spread these techniques, the more we spread this community of helping each other develop books and video games and animations, films, whatever, the better. That's Studio Blue's entire purpose. So, not Sharknado, though. Not doing it. Damn it. I'm going to go watch that movie now. Hate you guys. Okay. So, once away from those epicenters, things are, again, restating the obvious, influenced by the standard climate and geography model.
Yes.
Nature and climate, the roll of a die. You boys, Ventus. They still want more Shark Time. They really do, Yorkshire. I'm not going to get into it, but it started as a joke, and they hit gold, so good for them. All
okay,
right.
so we have our weather event based on where you're located.
Absolutely. Maybe the life spring and other punctures act as portals. At certain points, you get transported to another puncture. Always possible. Always possible. That's more that's the metaphysics, but absolutely possible. So oh God, $1 million budget. Actually, I'm going to be honest with you. Well, was it $1 million to write the script or $1 million for the movie? Because $1 million to write a script is ridiculously high. $1 million for a movie budget is nothing.
Ridiculously low.
Yeah, insanely low. I mean, unless you're doing like one of those like, $50,000, $100,000 Red Victoria style, or The Room, you're doing one of those. But under normal circumstances, big budgets, $1 million, like none. Each puncture has its own unique climate. I like that. Thank you, Ventus. Each puncture has its own unique climate. Lavnados.
Yes.
$1 million worth of shark. That's amazing, Paul. $1 million worth of shark. All right, each puncture has its own unique climate / weather system.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay, so let's do a little bit of refinement here. How does the god affect weather events? Because right now we have weather events are normal unless it's around the life spring or the puncture. So I'm going to leave this a little open-ended and give you guys a chance to respond. By influence of the usurper god, we'll just call him the god. What happens? Does the god only do things like solar flares, meteors, that kind of thing? Least likely one to comment. I agree, Tom. Your main religion and your main civilization would absolutely put themselves in a place that is mostly stable.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Think, what's the head of the religion in Final Fantasy X. The Spira place.
I don't remember.
The name of the town. It's the name of the city. It's not Luca. It's the other city. That city is one of the most stable places where sin attacks the least. So, yeah, you would put your main everything in one of the most relaxing places. The outer god does all the weather. I filters. Okay, Zarsla. I like the idea of solar flares. I like a lot of that. I like, of course, meteors.
Yeah, meteors.
Astronomical, cosmological event. That could be their explanation for it.
Yeah, could be.
Yeah. Okay. By influence of the god, external events such as... Oh, absolutely, Tom. Thanks for being a part of this. Solar flares, meteor showers, and extreme weather influenced by cosmological events can hit anywhere. This includes the massive Ellie that occurs once every certain years. So now what we have, and this is kind of Bavel, thank you, Vent. How can I forget that? So Zarsla's idea is actually really good. So the outer god, the god influences. Love you too, Prawl. You take care, man.
Love you too, Prawl.
Zarsla idea is great because what that means is that these external events like your flares and your magnetic storms and your other extreme weather caused by these meteorological events add more unpredictability. Because otherwise you'd have a world where if you're not near a puncture or near the life spring, things are going to be relatively normal and predictable, ergo meteorology and stuff. Pressure's dropping, it's getting colder, looks like rain. People would be able to live off of that normalcy, except for the outer god now does things to make it more chaotic. So, because of the life spring and its energy influence and the intervention.
Yeah.
That's not the right word.
Interference,
thank you. Of the god. This world is a world of unpredictability. Of complete unpredictability. Which is our thesis. That's technically our thesis statement.
Yeah.
So what we do with this now, and hold on, I'll hit chat in a second. In fact, I'll hit chat right now because it's laughing pretty hard. Oh, it's just Ventus. Okay, had realized something. Would sealing a puncture turn the climate normal? It might, actually. Yes, it would. I would say if they sealed a puncture, that area would even out except for the outer god's influence.
That's what I would think, too.
But make the other punctures become more aggressive? Highly possible. That's something to think about. Write that down. That could work with later world buildings. Okay, so here's our thesis. So we have taken all of this and we have come down to this. Because of the life spring and its energy influence and the interference of the god, the outer god, like that, we'll call him the outer god. This world is a world of complete unpredictability. And it's possible, Zarsla, that's something to consider. That is absolutely something to consider. We're going to put a pin on that. Actually, no, let's not. That's geography. Let's do that. Zarsla and Ventus, we're going to do that, what you suggest. Punctures are connected to each other, the life spring, and the core. And we can build off of postulates of what all that means later on, but we've now set that down as an axiom for our storytelling. Okay, and that works with what we've got. So, because this is a world of complete unpredictability, where things can shift from a geographical geological or meteorological point in general, at any point, due to the goddess's particles or the outer god trying to harm or keep the goddess asleep. Because of all that, when we now get to the next point, which will be next time, and we start designing our sapience, and we start designing our civilization, our magic, our technology, everything, we're going to be thinking of a people that live on a world that is very unpredictable. Human civilization on Earth is the way that it is because we have a dynamic changing environment, and we as a species are forced to adapt in order to survive. That adaptation takes place over a slow period of time. It used to be colder. We were used to that. Now it's warmer. We've adapted. We're a very adaptable species. So assuming that the species, the sapient species of this world is similar to us, be they human, elven, it really doesn't matter, they're going to have to adapt quicker. And we're going to have to figure out how, whether it be through genetic, magic, technology, whatever. We have to figure all that out. And this gives us our launch point. It also gives us a launch point for all that delicious conflict you guys have been talking about in chat for the past hour.
Yep.
We have to think about that. You know, our civilizations, why do they war? What is it? Is it resource fighting? Are they fighting over resources? Are they fighting over areas away from punctures? Are they fighting over areas near punctures? Is it both? We have so much we're going to be working on, so don't worry. We're going to be hitting those high points later on. But it is fantastic for you guys to, it could go Arctic, human, it could go. We're going to keep it separate from the dragon dwarf world, but it could. And the great fire in the sky could be the outer god. So maybe we will, maybe we won't. I don't think it'll be Stone Age, so this would be in the future from that story.
Yeah.
Because we've kind of put it in a little bit more of advancement just by the questions that chat's been throwing out. But this could go with that world. I agree. So now, having said all that, we are nearing the end, but I want to open it up for last 10 minutes or so ideas, thoughts, anything you guys think on a planetary level we can refine deeper. You can continue to throw out ideas about sapient species, climate, war, economy, civilization, that's fine. None of it will get recorded until we get to that world building episode. But I want to see if, going back here, if there's anything you guys think we should refine. I'm going to reread it one last time, and then I'm going to promptly lose my voice for the evening. All right, here we go. I know, right, Reverie? All right, here we go. The world of the dreaming goddess is a mixture of dynamic and static in between, roughly the size of the Earth. Its creation is an empire of deities that are actually super powerful science Avanzanato hyper beings, have a civil war. The emperor deity is killed, and the world, a super exoplanet, is ripped asunder. His heir, a goddess, is exiled into a piece of that sundered world from which she creates the world. The geographical timeline. Goddess is within the original world core. Her magic generates the heat within the core, and her struggles to free herself generate plate tectonics movements. That was really, really good idea. In order to survive, she has to, like, I can see her having like movements in her sleep, like a leg jerks and suddenly a mountain range appears. That's just freaking brilliant. Okay. In order to survive, she has to cultivate life within her world to feed on. So over time, her struggles and her magic start to create life, starting with simpler cell organisms and gradually getting more and more complex. The goddess is trapped in an eternal dream. Therefore, every part, the struggling, the powering, the magic, the absorption of life energy, is done subconsciously to survive, not out of malice. Do you know you're dreaming when you're dreaming, Reverie? Answer your question with a question. I would say a creature of this level of power would... That's a very good question. A creature of this level of power, if it was put in this kind of a sleep to where it couldn't move itself. I'm thinking of something that's multidimensional, something that's beyond our normal comprehension. I think sleep wouldn't be just simple sleep like you and I have. So I don't think the goddess would realize she's dreaming. Because if she had a coherency as to dreaming like you and I do, she'd wake herself up. That's what I think. Oh, hey, Tron. Oh, Tron, so much. I don't even know what to say. Teal, you've missed a lot, my friend. Catch the VOD.
Yeah, you'll have to catch the video.
Like, we legit have put we put a planet together. What have you done today? Just say like 4 words. We made a planet. There, 4 words. That's also a good idea. Let's put a pin in that one. Hold on.
Lucid dreaming.
Yeah. Well, because it is a good point. It is a good point Reverie brought up. So, gotcha. I'm caught up now. Look at your boy Tron. All right. Goddesses' dreams are. Ooh, here's an idea. Mostly unaware. You guys are just amazing. Hold on. Are mostly unaware, but during her lucid dreams, you ready for this? Is when she reaches out and blesses a protagonist to do a thing, whatever that thing is.
Wow,
there.
nice.
Boom. So during her moments of lucid dreaming, the goddess is able to reach out and boop, person in my champion, whatever that is. Just boop, a thing. Divine visitation, like exactly human. Divine visitation. Okay. This is amazing. Okay, the goddess is trapped in an eternal dream, blah, blah, blah. Okay, over time, her movements and power seepage create more complex planetary system. Meanwhile, one of the usurper gods is aware of the goddess's life force trying to sustain itself. In order to keep her contained, he exerts an external magic that will keep the world as a whole under a state of constant negative change. Natural disasters, meteors, extinction events, etc. The idea of the god is that if the lives upon the planet don't reach a certain level, the goddess cannot wake up and overthrow the usurper. God damn, I want to write this book now. Or make this game. Anybody here want to make this game? Goddess's dreams are mostly unaware, but during her lucid dreams, she reaches out and blesses a protagonist to do a thing. Goddess particles are basically her neurons. What happens if the goddess wakes up? Good question to posit for later. The story takes place on the nth time that all life has been wiped out by the god. Will this time be different? The story present is within the sapient. Geography. While the world itself is a series of continents upon approximately 70% water, similar to Earth, there are some greater extremes in geographical terrain due to the clash of goddess particles and god influence. For example, deserts may move well beyond their normal boundaries due to places that have been hit harder by the god's external force. Other places, such as lush rainforests, there's space there, may provide exponential nourishment due to an absence of the god's influence. There's a singular place upon this world called the Life Spring where a previous Ellie from the gods punctured from the god.
Yeah, it could be Reverie.
Punctured a Reverie? What, Huda? Yeah. Could be. Oh, yes, totally. This does sound like a Final Fantasy game.
Thank you for following us, Ellie Bell.
Thank you! All right. Where was I? Ellie. A previous Ellie. Haha. Extinction level event from the god punctured a hole leading towards the core. There, the goddess particles are so concentrated the geography that area defies all logic and sense. I.e., hold on, let me put down lava, beside, etc. The further away from the life spring, the more mundane the world's geography appears to be. Punctures are connected to each other, the life spring and the core. There are small... Look at me jumping my sentences. There are small punctures where less deadly concentration occurs. One of them is the main temple punctures that are connected to each other, the life spring and the core. Climate and weather. Like the geography, the closer one gets to the life spring or one of the small punctures, the more erratic the climate and weather patterns get. Ergo, when one approaches the life spring, you have a weather trope of swirling tempest, doomsday clouds, and constant thunder and light, and other stuff like extreme hot and cold right next to each other. The further away one goes from the life spring, the more normal the climate and weather actually become. On the whole, outside the influence of the goddess particles, the world has a temperate climate in the temperate zones, a hot, wet, dry climate in the equatorial region, and a cold, wet, dry climate in the Arctic, Antarctic regions. Reference the Earth model for climate and weather is fine when not dealing with a region near a puncture or the life spring. And people are slapping a whole bunch of things here. Hold on. The goddess might have nightmares. It's a good thing to think of, human. What happens if the goddess's dreams turn bad? Aha. Since humans are so prone for war, would the evil god continue his job? That's another thing to think about. Save that question, Boba. If the goddess dreams, what happens when he has a nightmare? Exactly, Tron. Save that one. And Tom is... Okay, weather events. Natural weather events occur based on climate and weather patterns. However, once you get close to a puncture or the life spring, things start to go awry. Close to the streams of goddess particles, everything is a constant and unstable flux. This includes the weather patterns, the climate itself, effect on life in general. For example, near the life spring, the weather can go from torrential rain to freezing blizzard to freaking raining fire in the blink of an eye. Tornadoes of lava and ice, and possibly sharks, can form and then drop into vapor. Plants and animals can change on a DNA level, either beneficial or negatively. The roll of the die, so to speak, when near that much power. Once away from those epicenters, things are again influenced by the standard climate and geography model. Each puncture has its own unique climate or weather system. By the influence of the god, external events such as solar flares, meteor showers, and extreme weather influenced by cosmological events can hit anywhere. This includes a massive LE that occurs once every X years. And here we have finally our thesis statement of the world itself. Because of the life spring and its energy influence and the interference of the outer god, this world is a world of complete unpredictability.
Woo! Stop. You got through all that, Teal. Yeah. So I can throw out a curveball here.
Oh, what's a curveball?
Is there a moon or moons?
Yeah.
Because if so, that's going to influence your tides.
It is. So let's do this.
With this planet being 70% water.
Yeah. The outer god is within one of the moons.
Oh, wow.
There we go. This is what I do. Oh, thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Good stuff. Okay, so catch my brain back. Back to the feast.
No shit, human. This is a tough place to live. Absolutely. Really... Oh my gosh.
we have straight up not made this easy on its inhabitants. When we continue this series, Earth size, Ron.
Earth size.
Roughly Earth size.
Roughly Earth size.
When we continue this, actually there would be a lot of moons and other possible nearby planets because this all came from an exoplanet that was blown up.
That's right.
So
there's going to be all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, there's going to be lots of space stuff. All right, so when we continue this, exactly, Reverie.
Yeah, the moon is an access point.
You can do so much with this.
Uh-huh.
Nothing is tougher than the 40K universe, Boba Hotep. That shit is crazy. Okay.
Yep.
So we're going to continue. Now, we're not going to do this one next week. We have a whole bunch of, we have like a calendar of events and potential classrooms. We're not going to go one after the other. We're going to kind of go from one thing to the next. Sometimes we'll talk about stuff that's more writing specific related. Sometimes things that are more game development related, right, Teal?
Yes, that is correct.
But we'll be cycling back to world building until the series is 100% complete. Reverie, that's possible.
It is possible.
It also means they might have, it would have rings, but it also would have sister planets, locked around a common gravitational point. In fact, there's nothing saying, and we could always come back and refine, that this is actually a moon with a smaller moon around a bigger planet. Like the forest moon of Endor in Star Wars is going around a gas giant, I think. It's been a while since I've seen Return of the Jedi. But that's a very good point, Reverie. So we're going to have to want to build the cosmological model of this world so that it has some level of mathematical truth in astronomy. Anyway, back to my point. We'll get it out eventually. We're going to continue the world building series, and obviously we'll let you guys know as soon as possible what each of these are. Teal, could you please hand me that blue notebook?
Yes.
Because what we're going to do is, I believe, Teal, we let them know at the end of the stream what the next week's topic is.
Yes, we're going to let you know what next week's topic is.
Right. If you guys keep doing the creator classrooms, hopefully one day you can do a cover story introduction. That's not a bad idea, Tron. I'll write that down.
Let's write that down.
We have been brainstorming the hell out of this thanks to you guys, giving us tons of ideas. All right, so it is May the 11th. We did World Building 1, Creating Your World. May 18th is How Revisions Can Save Your Story. So we're going to talk about how, through the revision process, you can take a story that's bad and make it good. Rescue it, basically. Yes.
Yes, we're going to go back to this world when we do world building.
Yes. So when we do the next Worldbuilding 2, which you'll know a week ahead of time, we are going to first have, again, the lecture part. And during the presentation that Teal gives, she's going to continue building on Earth, Narnia, and Nern. Then we'll swap over and we'll continue building this world going off of what Teal presented.
Right.
This will continue until we are finished with our world building series. We have got a lot of time, so don't worry, guys.
Yeah. We got nothing but time.
Nothing but time. I do hope that you all are enjoying this Creator Classroom series because I love doing it. You like doing it?
I really enjoy this.
It really is. This is a lot of fun. And of course, don't forget our critical plays, which is where we play a game, and as we are playing this AAA game, we critically analyze it, is our Wednesdays and Thursdays. Wednesdays, Teal plays Dragon Quest XI, and Thursdays, I play Final Fantasy VII Remake. We will, of course, continue that to new games when we finish those games, but we've been told we'll be playing Dragon Quest XI for a while. And don't forget, Friday nights are our AMAs. Right, Ask Us Anything. We will, of course, now that we have the ability, we're going to create channel trailers and post our schedules on our homepage, so you all will always know what Studio Blue is doing.
Yep.
And I think
we like to keep you informed.
We are. We're going to keep you guys informed. Absolutely. Well, it is a lot, Yorkshire. There's a lot to world building. It is so much.
It is a huge topic.
Huge topic. So if you feel a little bit overwhelmed, that's okay. The idea is to go and take it in chunks, build it pieces at a time until you have a working world. I don't know. Would you say it's time?
Yes, it's time.
It is time. So guys, we're going to go ahead and call it.
Okay, we're calling it.
And I've had a great time with you guys.
I've had a wonderful time too. We got a lot of good questions. We got a lot of good ideas thrown out.
You all are absolutely amazing every way. I cannot tell you enough. You all are the best chat ever.
You are. You keep it real. You keep it creative and real.
Can't wait to see you guys on Wednesday.
Yes, please join us on Wednesday.
Absolutely.
And we love you guys.
All right. Well, if you like what you saw, leave a smack down the like button below. Subscribe to our channel. Consider supporting us on Patreon. And connect with us over Facebook, Twitter, Discord, and we will see you in the next video.
See you next time.
Oh, you make me wanna talk back to you. Say it like that. If I hate you,